The black hotel maid casually answered a call in fluent Polish right in front of a millionaire. Seconds later, he demanded to see her in private with eyes wide in disbelief. But before we dive into the full story, let me know where you're watching from and what time it is. Now, subscribe to the channel, and let's get started. The click-clack of Nia Walker's worn cleaning cart echoed through the marble hallway of the Sovereign Hotel, a sound as familiar to her as her own heartbeat after 15 years of service. At 42, her hands were beginning to show the signs of countless hours scrubbing bathrooms and changing luxury linens, slight calluses that no amount of shea butter could fully soften. She'd seen the entire spectrum of humanity shuffle through these gold-trimmed doors. Celebrities hiding behind oversized sunglasses, politicians with fake smiles, families spending beyond their means for one taste of opulence, and the regulars who never learned her name despite her cleaning their rooms weekly for years. Today was different. Suite 1742 had been reserved for a special guest that had the entire management team on edge. Alexander Nowak, Polish-American billionaire and CEO of Nova Technologies, had chosen the Sovereign for his 3-day business summit. Even executive manager Robertson had personally inspected each room designated for Nowak's entourage. "Remember," he'd said during the morning staff briefing, his finger wagging like a metronome, "Mr. Nowak is known for his attention to detail. One stray hair, one misaligned towel, and your job could be on the line." His gaze had lingered on Nia a beat longer than the others, a subtle reminder of the hotel's unspoken hierarchy. Nia checked her watch. 2:15 p.m. Nowak and his team would be in meetings for another hour. Plenty of time to prepare his suite for the evening. She knocked gently on the door, 3 soft raps, and recited the practiced line. "Housekeeping." After waiting the customary 10 seconds and hearing no response, she used her key card to enter. The suite was a monument to luxury. Floor-to-ceiling windows offering a panoramic view of the city skyline, furniture crafted from materials most people would never touch in their lifetime, and enough space to comfortably house a family of 5. Yet it was also a monument to excess. 2 laptops open on the dining table, papers scattered across every surface, half-empty coffee cups creating rings on priceless wood, and clothes strewn across the king-sized bed as if tossed by a tempestuous wind. "Rich people," Nia muttered under her breath, "live like they've got a staff of 50 waiting at home too." She set to work with practiced efficiency, moving through the space like water, flowing, adapting, invisible. First, the bathroom, sanitizing, scrubbing, replacing toiletries with the special imported brands Mr. Nowak preferred. Then, the bedroom. Fresh linens with hospital corners so tight you could bounce a quarter off them, clothes hung or folded with precision. Finally, the living area. Surfaces dusted, papers stacked neatly, coffee cups removed and fresh flowers arranged in the crystal vase. Lilies, according to Mr. Nowak's preference sheet. As she worked, Nia hummed softly, a lullaby her grandmother used to sing, one of the few connections she still had to her family heritage. Her mind wandered to her daughter, Zora, now in her 2nd year at Columbia University on a full scholarship. The pride that swelled in her chest nearly overwhelmed the ache in her lower back from bending to clean under furniture. "This is all for you, baby girl," she whispered, smoothing the last wrinkle from the duvet. "All of it." The bathroom gleamed, the bed was immaculate, and the living area restored to order. Nia did a final walkthrough, scrutinizing every detail through the eyes of someone who could buy and sell the entire building without denting their fortune. Satisfied, she began packing up her cart when the hotel phone rang. She hesitated. Hotel policy strictly prohibited housekeeping staff from answering guest phones, but the shrill ring continued, insistent and demanding. What if it was important? What if Mr. Nowak was calling to check if his room was ready? On the 4th ring, instinct overrode protocol. Nia picked up the receiver. "Suite 1742, she answered professionally. The voice on the other end spoke rapidly in Polish, a language Nia hadn't expected to hear but recognized instantly. The caller seemed agitated, words tumbling over each other like rocks in a landslide. Without thinking, Nia responded in fluent Polish, her accent perfect despite not having used the language regularly in years. Pan Nowak jest obecnie na spotkaniu. Mogę przekazać wiadomość? Mr. Nowak is currently in a meeting. May I take a message? The conversation continued with Nia explaining she was housekeeping staff, not Mr. Nowak's assistant, but she would ensure he received the message about the delayed contract delivery. She jotted down the details on the hotel notepad, signed off politely, and hung up. It was only as she replaced the receiver that she noticed the figure standing in the doorway, Alexander Nowak himself, his tailored suit unmarred by a single wrinkle, his steel gray eyes wide with disbelief. Behind him stood Robertson, the executive manager, his face cycling through expressions like a slot machine, confusion, shock, and settling on horror. "Mr. Nowak," Robertson began, "I apologize for—" Nowak raised a hand, silencing him without shifting his gaze from Nia. His voice, when he spoke, was quiet, but carried the weight of someone accustomed to being obeyed. "Leave us." Robertson hesitated, looking between the billionaire and the housekeeper. "Now," Nowak added, a single syllable that brooked no argument. As Robertson retreated, closing the door behind him, Nia felt a cold weight settle in her stomach. 15 years of employment flashed before her eyes. Zora's tuition, her apartment rent, her mother's medical bills, all dependent on this job. "Sir, I apologize for answering your phone. It was unprofessional and against hotel policy. It won't happen again." She kept her voice steady, eyes downcast in a posture of deference she'd perfected over years of dealing with the wealthy and entitled. Nowak moved further into the room, circling her slowly like a predator assessing prey. "Your Polish is flawless," he said, switching to the language. "Where did you learn to speak with such a perfect Warsaw accent?" Nia hesitated. Her personal history wasn't something she discussed, especially not with hotel guests. But something in Nowak's intense gaze told her that evasion wasn't an option. "I was born there, sir, in Warsaw. Came to America when I was 15. The words felt strange in her mouth, not because of the language, but because it had been so long since she'd acknowledged this part of herself to anyone. "Your name?" Nowak demanded, still in Polish. "Nia Walker, sir." Before that, the question hung in the air between them. Nia's heart pounded so loudly she was certain he could hear it. "Natalia Walczak," she finally answered, the name feeling both foreign and intimately familiar on her tongue. Nowak's expression shifted, something unreadable flashing across his features. He switched back to English. "I need to speak with you privately, not here." He checked his watch, a timepiece worth more than Nia's annual salary. "Meet me in the hotel bar at 10 p.m., the private section in the back." It wasn't a request. "Sir, I'm sorry, but my shift ends at 9 and I have responsibilities at home." The lie came easily. In truth, she usually worked until 10:30 p.m., but something about this situation set off warning bells in her mind. "You'll be compensated for your time. Generously." His tone made it clear the discussion was over. 10 p.m. "Don't make me come looking for you, Natalia Walczak." The way he said her birth name sent a shiver down her spine. After he left, Nia stood frozen in the immaculate suite, her cleaning cart forgotten. The phone call replayed in her mind, such a small thing, answering a ringing phone. How could she have known it would crack open the door to a past she'd spent decades trying to keep shut? Her phone buzzed in her pocket. A text from Zora. "Got an A on my international relations paper. Dr. Kleinman says I should consider applying for the summer program in Geneva." The pride that normally would have flooded her was dampened by anxiety. Everything she'd built, everything she'd sacrificed for, it all felt suddenly precarious. By 9:50 p.m., Nia had changed out of her uniform into the spare clothes she kept in her locker, dark jeans and a simple blue blouse that her daughter had insisted brought out her eyes. She'd debated not showing up, claiming illness or family emergency the next day. But curiosity, that most dangerous of human impulses, propelled her toward the hotel bar. The Sovereign's bar was designed to evoke a Prohibition-era speakeasy, all dark wood and amber lighting that cast guests in the most flattering glow money could buy. At this hour, it was busy with conference attendees and business travelers seeking nightcaps before retiring to their rooms. Nia felt eyes tracking her as she moved through the space, not the appreciative glances some of the younger housekeepers received, but suspicious ones. What was someone like her doing in a place like this? She didn't belong, and everyone knew it. The private section was cordoned off with a velvet rope, guarded by a host with an earpiece. When she gave her name, his eyebrows rose fractionally before he nodded and unhooked the rope. Alexander Nowak sat alone at a corner table, a glass of amber liquid in front of him, the ice long melted. He wasn't looking at his phone or any papers. He was simply waiting, still as a statue, as if he'd been carved into the very chair. "You're 3 minutes early," he said as she approached, not bothering to stand. "Sit." Nia remained standing. "Mr. Nowak, I don't mean to be disrespectful, but I'd like to know why I'm here before we proceed." A ghost of a smile touched his lips. "Caution." "Good. Please sit. I mean you no harm, Natalia." "It's Nia," she corrected automatically, but took the seat across from him. A server materialized instantly. "Would Madam like something to drink?" Before she could respond with a polite refusal, Nowak interjected, "She'll have a Zhubrovka, neat." Then, noting her surprise, he added, "Unless your tastes have changed dramatically since Warsaw?" "That's fine," Nia said, unsettled by his presumption but unwilling to make a scene. When the server departed, Nowak leaned forward, his elbows on the table. 15 years you've worked in this hotel. Before that, 5 years at the Westerly in Boston. Before that, various jobs, waitress, retail, night school to improve your English while working days as a nanny." He recited the facts of her life as if reading from a dossier. All the while, hiding in plain sight, the server returned with her drink. Nia didn't touch it. "How do you know these things about me?" "I had you investigated. The moment I heard you speak on the phone, I had to know." "Why?" The question emerged sharper than she'd intended. Nowak took a sip of his drink, his eyes never leaving her face. "Because Natalia Walczak supposedly died in 1996, yet here you sit, very much alive." The world seemed to tilt beneath Nia, the carefully constructed reality of her life shifting like sand in an hourglass. "I don't know what you're talking about," she managed, but the tremor in her voice betrayed her. "I think you do." He reached into his jacket and withdrew a folded newspaper clipping yellowed with age. He smoothed it on the table between them. It was in Polish, but the headline needed no translation. The photograph beneath it showed a burning building, firefighters battling the blaze, and inset, a school portrait of a teenage girl with familiar eyes. Her eyes. "Tragic fire claims life of prosecutor's daughter," Nowak translated unnecessarily. "You were supposedly inside that building, Natalia. Your father identified the body himself." Nia's fingers hovered over the clipping but didn't touch it, as if it might burn her. "You've mistaken me for someone else." "Have I?" Nowak leaned back, studying her. "I don't make mistakes, especially not about this. The question isn't whether you're Natalia Walczak, but why the daughter of Warsaw's most renowned prosecutor faked her death and has spent 27 years hiding as a hotel maid in America." In that moment, Nia knew that the life she'd carefully constructed was balanced on a knife's edge. One push from this man, and it would all come crashing down. "What do you want from me?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Nowak's smile was cold, calculating. "Information." The same thing your father devoted his life to pursuing. The difference is, I'm willing to pay for it." He pushed a business card across the table. "Call this number tomorrow. Come alone." He stood, buttoning his jacket with the practiced ease of a man who had never worried about the cost of tailoring. "Oh, and Natalia? Don't even think about running, not again." His gaze flickered to his phone. That wouldn't end well for Zora, would it? The mention of her daughter's name froze the blood in Nia's veins. She remained seated as he walked away, the untouched Zubrovka catching the light like liquid gold, the newspaper clipping a time bomb on the table between them. The past she'd fled had finally found her, wearing a $3,000 suit and knowing exactly where to apply pressure. Sleep evaded Nia that night. She lay in her modest one-bedroom apartment, staring at the water stain on the ceiling that resembled a map of a country she'd never visit. The business card Nowak had given her rested on her nightstand, its embossed lettering catching the glow of streetlights filtering through thin curtains. When she closed her eyes, she saw her daughter's face. Zora, named for the dawn that had greeted them when she was born, the promise of a new day, a new life. The alarm clock's red digits ticked toward morning, 3:17 a.m., the witching hour, her grandmother would have called it, when the veil between worlds was thinnest. "I did die that night," Nia whispered to the darkness. "Natalia Walsack burned away and I rose from those ashes." By 6 a.m., having given up on sleep entirely, Nia sat at her small kitchen table with a cup of coffee gone cold, surrounded by the physical remnants of her past, items she'd kept hidden in a lockbox at the back of her closet. A tarnished silver locket containing a small photo of her parents, a library card from Warsaw, her original birth certificate, yellowed and creased, and a key, old-fashioned and heavy, to a place that no longer existed. Her phone rang, startling her. Unknown number. She let it go to voicemail. 3 minutes later, it rang again. Same unknown number. On the third call, she answered, her voice steady despite the anxiety churning in her stomach. "Hello? Ms. Walker." Not Nowak's voice, but someone equally accustomed to command. "Mr. Nowak expected your call an hour ago." Nia glanced at the clock, 7:03 a.m. "The card said to call today. It's barely morning." "Mr. Nowak's schedule does not accommodate delays. A car will collect you in 30 minutes. "I have work?" "Your absence has been cleared with hotel management." 30 minutes, Ms. Walker. The car will be black. The driver will identify himself with the word Schwitt." Dawn. The line went dead before she could respond. 28 minutes later, dressed in her best non-work clothes, dark slacks and a cream blouse she'd bought for Zora's high school graduation, Nia stepped onto the sidewalk outside her building. A black Lincoln Town car idled at the curb, its engine a quiet purr in the morning air. A man in a suit emerged from the driver's side. He was built like a refrigerator with a neck that strained against his collar and hands that could easily snap a baseball bat. "Schwitt," he said, his accent mangling the Polish word. The back door opened. Nia hesitated, years of caution warring with the knowledge that refusal wasn't an option. Not with Zora's name hanging unspoken between them. The drive took 40 minutes, cutting through morning traffic with the efficiency of someone who knew exactly which lanes to take and when. They headed away from the city center, past industrial zones and into an area of renovated warehouses and luxury developments carved from the shells of former factories. The car pulled up to an unmarked building, all steel and glass, with no signage to indicate what happened inside. The driver opened her door. 15th floor. The elevator requires a key." He handed her a card. "Return it when you leave." The lobby was minimalist to the point of austerity. Concrete floors, bare walls, a single desk with no one behind it. The elevator, when it arrived, was lined with mirrors, forcing Nia to confront her reflection from every angle. She saw a woman trying to project confidence, but the slight tremor in her hand as she held the key card betrayed her. The 15th floor opened to a reception area where a young woman with an immaculate bob and perfect posture sat behind a desk that appeared to be carved from a single piece of marble. "Ms. Walker," she greeted without asking for identification. "Mr. Nowak is waiting in the conference room. Would you like coffee before you join him?" "No, thank you." Nia's throat was too dry for coffee. The receptionist led her down a hallway lined with abstract art that probably cost more than everything Nia had ever owned. She opened a door at the end of the corridor and gestured for Nia to enter. The conference room had floor-to-ceiling windows offering a panoramic view of the city. Alexander Nowak stood with his back to the door, hands clasped behind him, silhouetted against the skyline like a man surveying his kingdom. "Natalia," he said without turning. "Or do you prefer Nia now?" "Nia is who I am." She remained standing near the door, unwilling to move further into his territory without understanding the rules of engagement. Nowak turned, his expression unreadable. "Identity is a curious thing, isn't it? So fluid, yet so foundational." He gestured to the conference table where 2 places were set with crystal water glasses and leather portfolios. "Please sit. We have much to discuss." Nia took the seat furthest from him, her back to the windows. She preferred to see who might come through the door. "Your caution is understandable," Nowak said, taking his own seat. "But unnecessary. If I wished you harm, we wouldn't be having this conversation in my corporate headquarters. What do you want from me, Mr. Nowak?" He opened the portfolio in front of him, revealing photographs, surveillance images of Nia entering her apartment building, at the grocery store, standing outside Columbia University during what must have been a visit to Zora. "I want to understand," he said simply. "The daughter of prosecutor Stefan Walsack doesn't vanish from the face of the earth, fake her own death, and spend decades scrubbing toilets without a compelling reason." He closed the portfolio. Especially not when her father spent his career building cases against the Rona Syndicate, only to abruptly drop his investigation 3 months after her supposed death. The name sent a shock through Nia's system. Rona, the Crow. She hadn't heard it spoken aloud in 27 years. "You've been researching me," she said, fighting to keep her voice level. "I've been researching many things. The collapse of communist Poland created interesting power vacuums. Some were filled by democratic institutions. Others," he shrugged, "by less savory entities." "What does any of this have to do with me?" Nowak leaned forward. "Your father's case was building toward something significant. Arrests that would have implicated government officials, business leaders, even religious figures. Then suddenly, nothing. Charges dropped, evidence misplaced, witnesses recanting, and the most passionate anti-corruption prosecutor in Warsaw becoming a shell of himself, pushing paper until his retirement 10 years ago." A memory surfaced. Her father at the kitchen table, surrounded by files, his face gray with exhaustion, his hands shaking as he reached for his coffee. "These people," he'd told her, "they don't just break the law, Natalia. They believe they are the law." "My father was a good man," she said softly. "I'm not questioning his character. I'm questioning what could possibly have been valuable enough to make him abandon the work that defined his life." Nowak's gaze was piercing. Or perhaps I should say, who? The implication hung in the air between them. Nia's mind raced. All these years she'd believed she'd been running from the Rona Syndicate. Had she instead been a pawn used against her own father? "I don't know what you're suggesting," she said, the words feeling hollow even to her own ears. "I think you do." Nowak opened a drawer beneath the table and withdrew a file folder, older and more worn than the portfolio. "This contains portions of your father's case notes, portions that were never officially filed. I acquired them at considerable expense." "How?" "Not everyone who worked for the Rona Syndicate did so willingly. Some kept insurance policies, information that might protect them if the tide ever turned." He pushed the folder toward her. 3 days before the fire that supposedly killed you, your father identified a key witness who could connect all the pieces. The next day, that witness disappeared. 2 days later, you died in a fire that forensic reports, unofficially, indicated was arson. Nia's fingers trembled as she opened the folder. Inside were photocopies of handwritten notes in her father's precise script. Names, dates, connections she'd never known about. And in the margins of one page, a series of numbers and letters that made her heart skip a beat. It was a code, one her father had created for them when she was a child, a secret language for passing notes at the dinner table under her mother's watchful eye. This particular sequence translated to a simple message: protect the swallow. Jaskoka, swallow, her childhood nickname. These are forgeries, she said, closing the folder. They're not. Nowak's voice was gentle, almost sympathetic. Your father sacrificed his life's work to save you. The question is, from what? Or from whom? The room seemed to shrink around her, the air growing thinner. I was 15, she said, the words escaping before she could stop them. I didn't understand politics or organized crime. I just knew that one day everything was normal, and the next, my father was putting me on a plane with a new passport and telling me never to contact him again. It was the first time she'd spoken of that day to anyone. The memory was vivid. Her father's face, lined with worry and lack of sleep, the weight of the passport in her hand, the strange name inside it, the way he'd embraced her at the gate, whispering that he loved her more than his own life. And the fire? Nowak prompted. I was already gone when it happened. I saw it in a newspaper days later, in a language I barely understood at the time. Nowak nodded, as if confirming a theory. Your father staged your death to protect you, but from whom? And why maintain the fiction for 27 years? Stefan Walczak died last year, did you know that? The news hit Nia like a physical blow. Her father, gone from this world without her ever having the chance to say goodbye. To ask why. To tell him about Zora, the granddaughter he'd never know. Heart attack, Nowak continued. His apartment was broken into the same night. Nothing of value was taken, but his personal papers were thoroughly searched. How do you know all this? Nia demanded, grief and suspicion warring within her. Because I've spent the last 15 years tracking the remnants of the Rona Syndicate. Nowak's expression hardened. Their tentacles reached far beyond Poland, into banking, real estate, technology. They didn't disappear when communism fell. They evolved, became respectable, changed their name. The pieces were aligning in Nia's mind, forming a picture she didn't want to see. Nova, she whispered, your company. Nowak's smile was cold. Not my company. I merely acquired it 5 years ago. It took me a decade to identify all their holdings, to position myself to take control. They thought I was just another ambitious businessman looking to expand his portfolio. His eyes glittered with something dangerous. They didn't realize I was hunting them. Why? The question was simple but loaded with implications. The same reason you've been hiding for 27 years, I imagine. Nowak stood, moving to the window. They took something from me, too. The revelation shifted the ground beneath Nia once again. This wasn't a confrontation. It was a recruitment. What do you want from me? She asked again, this time with more weight behind the question. Nowak turned from the window. Information. Your father had evidence. Evidence that could expose the original members of the Rona Syndicate, many of whom are now legitimate business and political leaders. Evidence he never used because doing so would have revealed that you were still alive. If such evidence existed, it died with him. Perhaps Nowak returned to the table. Or perhaps he found a way to preserve it. A safety deposit box, a hidden server, a trusted friend. You knew him better than anyone. You could help me find it. And if I refuse? Then you return to your life as Nia Walker, cleaning rooms, sending money to your brilliant daughter, always looking over your shoulder wondering if the next guest who recognizes your accent might be someone with connections to the past. The threat was subtle but clear. Zora's future depended on Nia's cooperation. And if I help you? Security, for you and Zora. Financial stability. And the one thing I suspect you've wanted since the day your father put you on that plane. Answers. Nia's mind whirled with possibilities, calculations, risks. I need time to think. Of course. Nowak closed the file. You have until tomorrow morning. After that, things become complicated. Outside the building, the sun had fully risen, burning away the last traces of dawn. Nia stood on the sidewalk, Nowak's final words echoing in her mind. Remember, Natalia, the Rona never forgave, and they never forgot. The only question is whether they knew your father was protecting you all these years, or if your continued existence would come as a surprise to them. The Blacktown car waited to return her to her apartment, to the life she'd built from nothing. But for the first time in 27 years, Nia questioned whether that life had been her own creation, or if she'd been living in a cage built by others, a cage designed not to keep her in, but to keep something else out. As she slid into the back seat, her phone buzzed with a text from Zora. "Mom, the strangest thing happened. A woman approached me after class, said she knew you from the old country. Should I be worried?" The cage door had just swung open, and whatever lurked beyond it was already closing in. Nia's hands trembled as she typed a response to Zora. What did she look like? What exactly did she say? She hesitated, then added, "Don't engage with her if she approaches again. Call me immediately." The response came almost instantly. Tall blonde woman, designer clothes. Said she was an old friend of yours from Warsaw. Knew your real name, Mom. What's going on? The town car slowed at a red light. Outside, people moved through their ordinary lives, walking dogs, sipping coffee, checking watches, unaware that Nia's carefully constructed world was collapsing around her. "Change of plans," she told the driver, her voice surprisingly steady. "Take me back to Nova headquarters. I have instructions to return you to your residence. Then I'll get out here and take a taxi back." She reached for the door handle. The driver's eyes met hers in the rearview mirror. After a moment of calculation, he nodded and made a sharp U-turn when the light changed. Nia sent another text to Zora. "Stay in public places. Don't go back to your dorm alone. I'll explain everything soon." The elevator ride back to the 15th floor felt even longer than the first time. Nia's mind raced through possibilities, each more alarming than the last. The receptionist looked surprised to see her, but quickly schooled her expression into professional neutrality. "I need to see Mr. Nowak immediately." "I'm afraid he's in a meeting. Tell him it's about the swallow." Nia locked eyes with the young woman, willing her to understand the urgency. The receptionist hesitated, then picked up her phone and murmured something Nia couldn't hear. A moment later, she hung up. "Follow me, please." She led Nia not to the conference room but through a different corridor to a large office with a view even more impressive than the one before. Nowak stood behind a glass desk, speaking rapidly in what sounded like German to someone on speakerphone. He concluded the call when Nia entered. "That was faster than I expected," he said, gesturing to a seating area by the window. "Someone approached my daughter at Columbia." Nia remained standing. A woman who knew I was from Warsaw, who knew my real name. Nowak's expression shifted to one of genuine concern. "Describe her." "Tall, blonde, designer clothes, according to my daughter." He moved to his desk and tapped a few keys on his computer. After a moment, he turned the monitor toward her. "Is this her?" The screen showed a surveillance photo of a statuesque blonde woman in her 40s. Elegant in a way that suggested old money and older secrets. "I don't know. I'd have to show Zora." Nia stepped closer to the desk. "Who is she?" "Eliza Kroll. Officially, she's a cultural attaché with the Polish consulate. Unofficially, she's connected to several former Rona members." Nowak's jaw tightened. If she's approaching Zora, the clock has just accelerated. What does that mean? It means they know. He shut down the computer. They know you're alive, and they've found your daughter. The room seemed to tilt. Nia gripped the edge of the desk to steady herself. How? After all these years, how could they possibly— The same way I did. The phone call you answered in Polish. Do you think it was a coincidence that a Polish speaker called my room while you were cleaning it? Nowak shook his head. I suspected your existence for months. The call was a test. A test? I've been tracking former Rona members for years. Some are easy to find. They became politicians, business leaders. Others went deeper underground. One name kept appearing in old files but never in person. Natalia Walczak. Nowak circled the desk to stand before her. Your father's case had teeth, real teeth, the kind that could still draw blood today if the evidence were to surface. So you engineered that call, Nia said, the pieces falling into place. You set me up. I needed to confirm my theory. And now my daughter is in danger because of your theory. Her voice rose, anger overwhelming caution. What have you done? I've created an opportunity, Nowak replied calmly. For us both. An opportunity? Nia laughed bitterly. My daughter is being stalked by people who have spent 27 years thinking I was dead. People my father thought dangerous enough to fake my death and send me to another continent. People I can protect you from, Nowak countered. Both of you. But only if you help me find what your father hid. Nia's mind raced through options, weighing variables she'd never expected to calculate. I need to get Zora somewhere safe. My security team can collect her from campus within the hour. And take her where? I maintain a secure residence upstate, remote, fully staffed, completely off official records. The urge to protect her child warred with Nia's instinct not to trust this man who had, by his own admission, put them in danger. I don't know you, Mr. Nowak. Why would I trust my daughter's safety to you? Nowak was silent for a moment, his calculating gaze fixed on some middle distance. Then he loosened his tie, unbuttoned his collar, and turned to show her the side of his neck. A jagged scar ran from behind his ear to his collarbone, old and white against his skin. Because I was 15, too, he said softly, when they came for my family. The revelation hung in the air between them. Nia studied his face, seeking deception and finding only a reflection of her own carefully contained pain. The Rona Syndicate? She asked. A different branch? Same tree? He rebuttoned his collar. Your father was building a case against their operations in Poland. My father was a journalist investigating their activities in Hungary. The methods were different, the results were the same. A shadow passed over his features. Except your father managed to save you. The implication was clear. Nowak's family hadn't been so fortunate. I'll help you, Nia said finally. But Zora comes first. I need to see her, explain what's happening. Of course. Nowak returned to his desk and pressed an intercom button. Send in Kovacs. A moment later, the door opened to admit a man in his 50s, lean and weathered, with eyes that seemed to catalog every detail of the room in seconds. Ms. Walker needs to reach her daughter at Columbia immediately, Nowak told him. Take whatever resources you need. Bring them both to the Alpine property. Maximum security protocols. Kovacs nodded once, his gaze briefly meeting Nia's. Ma'am, if you could provide your daughter's information and a recent photograph? As Nia compiled the details on a notepad, a thought occurred to her. The woman who approached Zora. If she knows I'm alive, others might too. How do I know we weren't followed here? You were, Nowak said simply. By my people and possibly theirs. Standard counterintelligence measures were employed before you arrived. The casual way he referred to surveillance and counterintelligence reminded Nia that whatever game she'd been drawn into had been in play long before she answered that phone call. "What happens after Zora is secure?" she asked. "We go to Warsaw," Nowak replied, "where it all began." Warsaw? The word caught in her throat. The city of her childhood, now as foreign to her as the surface of Mars. Why? Because whatever your father hid, whatever evidence he compiled, it isn't here in New York. If it were, they wouldn't have waited until now to come looking for you. Naya handed the notepad to Kovac, who took it with a nod and left the room. "How can you be sure?" "Because 3 months ago, Stefan Walczak's personal effects were finally released from government storage. Standard procedure after death when there are no immediate heirs to claim them. The official inventory showed nothing unusual: clothes, books, photographs. But the unofficial record, obtained at great expense, indicates something was removed before the inventory was completed. By whom? Someone with enough influence to access a sealed apartment. Someone nervous enough to want whatever your father left behind." Nowak's expression was grim. Someone who might now believe the key to finding it is his supposedly dead daughter. The implications were staggering. For 27 years, Naya had believed her father had sent her away to protect her from people who wanted to hurt him through her. But what if it had been the other way around? What if she had been sent away to protect something he couldn't risk falling into their hands? "If we go to Warsaw, they'll be watching," she said. "They're already watching." Nowak adjusted his cufflinks. "The advantage is that they don't know we know. They'll be tracking Natalia Walczak, the prosecutor's daughter, not Alexander Nowak, tech billionaire and his personal assistant." "Personal assistant? Your cover, for the journey." He almost smiled. "Unless you'd prefer to be my girlfriend? The tabloids would love that story." Despite everything, Naya felt a flash of irritation. "Let's stick with professional relationships, Mr. Nowak." "Alexander, please, if we're going to be working closely together." "How closely?" "Close enough to know you have a knife strapped to your left ankle," he said mildly. "Security checkpoint on your way in. Very thorough scanners." Nia didn't bother denying it. The knife was small but sharp, a precaution she'd carried since her first year in America. "You'll forgive me if recent events have made me cautious." "Caution is what's kept you alive this long." Nowak moved to a cabinet and withdrew 2 tumblers and a crystal decanter. "The question is whether it's enough to keep you alive going forward." He poured an inch of amber liquid into each glass and offered one to her. Nia hesitated, then accepted it. The scent of good whiskey reached her nostrils. "To unlikely alliances," Nowak said, raising his glass. "To survival," Nia countered, touching her glass to his butt, not drinking. Nowak noticed but didn't comment, simply taking a sip of his own drink. "Kovac will have a secure phone delivered to you before you leave. Use only that to contact your daughter. Your apartment and personal devices are likely compromised." The reality of her situation was sinking in. 24 hours ago, she had been Naya Walker, hotel maid and single mother. Now she was Natalia Walczak again, a hunted woman with a price on her head she couldn't even calculate. "When do we leave for Warsaw?" she asked. "Tomorrow evening. Private jet from Teterboro." He set down his glass. "Until then, you'll stay at a secure location. Pack lightly when you return to your apartment. Essentials only. And Natalia..." He stopped himself. "Nia, don't trust anyone. Not even me. Not completely." "I wasn't planning to." His smile was approving. "Good. That's why you've survived this long." As she was escorted from the building by one of Nowak's security personnel, Nia tried to process the whirlwind of revelations. Her father had died still protecting her secret. Someone had been searching for something he'd hidden. And now, after nearly 3 decades, she was returning to the city she'd fled to confront a danger she'd spent her entire adult life pretending didn't exist. The secure phone, a sleek model with no manufacturer's logo, was delivered to her in the car. It contained only 2 contacts, A and Z. She pressed the latter. Zora answered on the first ring. "Mom? What's going on?" Some guy just showed up at my dorm saying he works for Alexander Nowak and I need to come with him right away. It's okay, baby, I'm sending you somewhere safe. Nia swallowed hard. There are some things I need to tell you. About who I was before. About who we are. Mom, you're scaring me. I know, sweetheart. I'm scared too. But I promise you, everything I've done, everything I've kept from you, it was all to keep you safe. There was a long pause on the other end of the line. When Zora spoke again, her voice was steady, revealing the core of steel she'd inherited from both her mother and the grandfather she'd never known. Tell me everything. And for the first time since she'd stepped onto a plane at Warsaw International Airport at 15, Natalia Walczak began to speak the truth. The secure location turned out to be a penthouse apartment in a building Nowak apparently owned, though his name appeared nowhere in the property records Nia later discovered. The space was minimalist but comfortable, with floor-to-ceiling windows tinted to prevent anyone from seeing inside. The security guard who escorted her there, a woman named Rivera, with close-cropped hair and watchful eyes, gave her a brief tour before taking up position in the hallway outside. Alone for the first time since the morning, Nia sank onto the edge of the bed in the master suite and allowed herself 5 minutes, 5 precious minutes, to fall apart. Tears she'd been holding back all day came in a silent flood, her body shaking with the effort of containing them. 27 years of running. 27 years of lying. And for what? For it all to come crashing down because she'd answered a hotel phone? When the 5 minutes were up, she straightened her shoulders, wiped her face, and moved to the bathroom to wash away the evidence of weakness. The woman who stared back at her from the mirror was someone she barely recognized. Not the confident Nia Walker who had raised a daughter alone and put her through college, nor the terrified Natalia Walczak who had fled Warsaw with nothing but a passport and a promise never to look back. This woman had haunted eyes and a determined set to her jaw. This woman had survived worse than whatever was coming. The secure phone buzzed with a message from A. Your daughter is en route. ETA 90 minutes. Nia found the kitchen fully stocked and began preparing a simple pasta dish, one of Zora's favorites from childhood. The familiar motions of chopping vegetables and stirring sauce grounded her, gave her something to do with hands that wanted to tremble. 87 minutes later, the elevator announced an arrival. Nia's heart leapt to her throat as the doors slid open to reveal Zora, flanked by Kovac and another security officer. Her daughter's face was pale, her eyes wide with a mixture of fear and determination that struck Nia like a physical blow. It was the same expression she'd seen in the mirror minutes ago, the face of a woman forced to be brave before she was ready. Mom. The word was part accusation, part relief. Nia crossed the space between them in 3 strides and pulled Zora into a fierce embrace. For a moment her daughter remained stiff in her arms but then melted against her with a small sound that might have been a sob. I'm so sorry, Nia whispered into Zora's hair. So sorry I didn't tell you sooner. Kovac cleared his throat discreetly. Ms. Walker, we've secured the perimeter. Mr. Nowak will be joining you shortly to discuss next steps. Nia nodded, not releasing her hold on Zora. Thank you for bringing her safely. When they were alone, Zora pulled back, her eyes red-rimmed but dry. You told me Dad was an exchange student you met in college, that he died in a car accident before I was born. Oh, baby. Nia led her to the sofa, where they sat with their knees touching, hands clasped. I needed to give you a history that wouldn't lead anyone to us. The further from the truth, the safer we were. And who is my father, really? The question Nia had dreaded for 22 years. His name was Marek. He was a law student who worked as a clerk in my father's office. We were... She smiled faintly at the memory. We were ridiculous. So young, so convinced we knew everything. He used to bring me flowers stolen from the municipal gardens and leave protest poetry in my school locker. Was he... Zora hesitated. Was he why you had to leave? No, Nia squeezed her daughter's hands. He died 2 months before I left Warsaw. A hit-and-run accident that was never solved. I didn't know I was pregnant when I came to America. By the time I found out, there was no going back. Zora absorbed this in silence, her expressive face, so like her father's, cycling through emotions too complex to name. So my grandfather, she said finally, was some kind of anti-corruption prosecutor? And people wanted to kill him? To kill you? It's more complicated than that. Nia rose and moved to the kitchen, needing something to do with her hands again. She served 2 plates of the pasta she'd prepared, though neither of them had much appetite. Your grandfather was building a case against a criminal organization called the Rona Syndicate. They had infiltrated every level of Polish society, government, business, even the church. As the evidence mounted, as the case grew stronger, the threats against him escalated. And he sent you away to protect you. That's what I believed for 27 years. Nia pushed her food around her plate. Now I'm not so sure. What do you mean? Alexander Nowak, the man who's helping us, believes your grandfather might have sent me away to protect something else. Information, evidence, something the Rona Syndicate would kill to keep buried. And you don't know what it is? No. If I did, I wouldn't have spent the last decades cleaning hotel rooms. Zora set down her fork. So this Nowak guy, is he trustworthy? A question Nia had been asking herself all day. He has resources we need, and he has his own reasons for wanting to expose these people. The elevator announced another arrival before Zora could respond. Alexander Nowak entered, looking as impeccable as he had that morning despite the late hour. He'd changed into a more casual outfit, slacks and a cashmere sweater that probably cost more than Nia's monthly rent, but his demeanor remained all business. Ms. Columbia, he greeted Zora with a nod. I'm Alexander Nowak. I apologize for the disruption to your studies. Zora rose, extending her hand with the poise of someone twice her age. I think my education is about to continue in ways my professors never intended. Thank you for your help, Mr. Nowak. He seemed almost surprised by her composure, shaking her hand with a small smile. You have your mother's resilience and your grandfather's directness. I never met my grandfather, Zora pointed out. No, but I did. Once. Nowak moved to the living area, gesturing for them both to join him. Years ago, when I was first piecing together the extent of the Rona network, he was already retired, but his reputation remained formidable. Nia's head snapped up. You never mentioned meeting my father. It wasn't relevant until now. Nowak settled into an armchair. He was suspicious, of course, a foreign businessman asking questions about old cases, but he agreed to meet. I told him I was researching historical corruption for a book. He saw through the lie immediately. What did he say? Nia's voice was barely above a whisper. He said, the past should stay buried when the living still depend on its secrets. I thought he was being metaphorical. Nowak's gaze was steady. Now I understand he was being literal. He was talking about you. The revelation sent a chill through Nia. Her father had known all those years that someone was still interested in the case, had still chosen to protect her, even at the cost of justice for the people the Rona had hurt. What happens now? Zora asked, breaking the heavy silence. You'll stay here under protection, Nowak explained. This building has security measures that would make most government agencies envious. My team will ensure you have everything you need to continue your studies remotely. And my mother? Your mother and I leave for Warsaw tomorrow evening. He turned to Nia. We'll approach as business associates, the billionaire and his assistant, visiting Nova's Polish subsidiary. A reasonable cover that will get us into the country without raising immediate alarms. And once we're there, Nia asked, we begin retracing your father's steps. His apartment, his office, the places he frequented. Somewhere in that city is the answer to what he was protecting all these years. Zora's expression hardened. "You're using my mother as bait." Nowak didn't flinch from the accusation. "I'm using every resource available to expose a criminal network that has destroyed countless lives, including your mother's." "It's okay, Zora," Nia interjected. "I've agreed to this. Because he's threatening you with my safety. Because it's time." Nia reached for her daughter's hand. "I've been running for 27 years, running from shadows I could barely remember. Now those shadows have found us, and the only way out is through." Zora held her gaze for a long moment, then nodded reluctantly. "Promise me you'll be careful, that you'll come back." "I promise," Nia said, the weight of the vow settling on her shoulders like a physical thing. Nowak cleared his throat. "We should discuss practical matters. Tomorrow morning, someone from my team will take you shopping for appropriate attire. As my assistant, you'll need to look the part." "I have clothes," Nia began. "With respect, you don't have the clothes required for this role." His tone was matter-of-fact, not unkind. "First impressions matter. We need you to be invisible in plain sight, unremarkable except as an extension of my business persona." "Fine." Nia didn't have the energy to argue over clothes. "What else?" "You'll need to familiarize yourself with basic information about Nova Technologies and my business activities. My actual assistant has prepared a briefing document." He gestured to a tablet on the coffee table. "Review it tonight if you can. We'll have the flight tomorrow to refine any details." "You've thought of everything," Zora commented, her tone making it clear this wasn't entirely a compliment. Nowak's smile was thin. "When you've spent as long as I have hunting these people, preparation becomes second nature." "And what about your actual hunt?" Nia asked. "Your day job? Who runs Nova while you're playing detective in Warsaw?" "I have a competent executive team that manages day-to-day operations. As far as they're concerned, I'm conducting a routine inspection of international subsidiaries, not unusual for someone who acquired a company and is still learning its intricacies." The practiced ease with which he explained it all reminded Nia that Alexander Nowak had been living a double life too, respected businessman by day, vengeful hunter by night. They were more alike than she cared to admit. "How long will this take?" she asked, thinking of her job, her apartment, the life she'd built that now seemed as fragile as a house of cards. "I don't know," Nowak admitted. "Days, perhaps weeks. Depends on what we find and how quickly we find it." "And if we find nothing?" His expression darkened. "Then we've failed. And the people who destroyed your life and mine continue to profit from others' suffering. That's not an outcome I'm willing to accept." Zora, who had been watching this exchange with shrewd eyes, spoke up. "If my mother is going to risk her life with you, I think we deserve to know exactly what these people did to you. Why this is personal?" Nowak regarded her for a long moment, as if weighing how much to reveal. "Fair enough," he said finally. "My father was Josef Kovac, an investigative journalist in Budapest. In 1989, as the Soviet Union was collapsing, he began documenting the movement of Communist Party funds into private hands, specifically into the hands of former intelligence officers who were reinventing themselves as businessmen." "The Rona Syndicate?" Nia asked. "A branch of it. They operated across Eastern Europe using different names in different countries, but the structure was the same." Nowak's voice had taken on a detached quality, as if he were reciting a case study rather than his own history. "In March 1990, my father published an article naming names. 3 days later, men came to our home. They killed my parents, my younger sister. They thought they killed me too." The stark simplicity of the statement hung in the air. "I'm sorry," Zora said softly. Nowak inclined his head slightly in acknowledgement. "I spent 2 years in a hospital recovering. When I was well enough, I was sent to live with distant relatives in America. I changed my name, built a new identity, built a fortune, and all the while I tracked them, watched them transform from thugs into titans of industry." "And now you want to take them down," Nia finished for him. "Now I want justice." His eyes met hers, and in them she saw the same cold flame that had burned in her father's gaze when he spoke of corruption. The same justice your father sought before he chose your safety over his mission. The parallels between their stories, the violence, the new identities, the decades of waiting, created a connection Nia couldn't deny. Whether she trusted Alexander Nowak was almost beside the point. They were bound by a common enemy, a shared history of loss. "Tomorrow, then," she said, accepting the inevitable, "we go to Warsaw." "Tomorrow," he agreed, rising. "Get some rest, both of you. The security team will remain in place overnight. If you need anything, Rivera is just outside." After he left, Zora turned to her mother with eyes that had aged years in a day. "Are you sure about this, Mom? About him?" Nia thought of all the times she'd looked over her shoulder on darkened streets, all the times she'd jolted awake from dreams of pursuit, all the years spent scanning hotel lobbies for faces that might recognize her, always running, always hiding, always afraid. "No," she admitted, "but I'm sure it's time to stop running." That night, as Zora slept in the guest room, Nia stood at the window looking out at the city lights. Somewhere out there, the people who had sent her father to his grave were waiting, watching, planning. Tomorrow she would fly straight into their territory, guided by a man whose motives remained as complex and shadowed as her own past. The city that had been her refuge for 27 years now felt like a cage she was finally leaving. Whether what waited beyond was freedom or doom remained to be seen. The woman in the mirror was a stranger. Nia stared at her reflection in the boutique's three-way mirror, barely recognizing herself in the tailored charcoal pantsuit and silk blouse. Her hair, usually pulled back in a practical bun for work, had been cut and styled into a sleek bob that framed her face in a way that somehow made her look both younger and more sophisticated. "The transformation is remarkable," said Marta, the personal shopper Nowak had arranged. She circled Nia with a professional eye. "From housekeeping to high finance in under 3 hours." "It's just clothes," Nia murmured, though she knew it wasn't. It was armor, camouflage, a disguise as complete as the one she'd worn for 27 years as Nia Walker. "Mr. Nowak was very specific about the look," Marta continued, adjusting the fall of the jacket. "Professional but not flashy. Quality materials but understated designs. The perfect executive assistant. Competent, invisible, forgettable." The last word stung, though Nia knew it was the point. She needed to be forgettable. The woman who had answered the phone in fluent Polish had been too memorable. By the time they returned to the penthouse loaded with bags containing 5 similar outfits, Nia felt as if she'd shed her skin completely. The physical transformation mirrored the mental one taking place. Nia Walker receding, Natalia Walczak emerging from decades of hibernation. Zora looked up from her laptop as Nia entered. For a moment, surprise registered on her face before she masked it. "Wow, Mom, you look different," Nia supplied. "I was going to say powerful." Zora set aside her computer and stood, like you could run a company instead of cleaning up after the people who do. The observation was uncomfortably perceptive. Nia had spent so many years making herself small, unobtrusive, the kind of person whose gaze slid right past. The woman in the mirror looked like someone who expected to be seen, to be heard. "It's just for the mission," she said, setting down the shopping bags. "Just until we find what we're looking for." Zora cocked her head. "And then what? Back to the Sovereign? Back to being invisible?" The question hit a nerve Nia hadn't realized was exposed. What did come after? If they succeeded, if they survived, could she ever return to the life she'd built? Would she want to? "Let's focus on getting through the next few days," she said instead of answering. "Have you been okay here? Has security been respectful?" "They've been fine. Professional." Zora gestured to her laptop. "I've been messaging with my professors, arranging to do coursework remotely. Told them there was a family emergency. "I'm sorry about all this," Nia began. "Don't." Zora held up a hand. "You've apologized enough. I understand why you kept the truth from me. I don't love it, but I understand it." The acceptance in her daughter's voice nearly undid Nia. She crossed the room and embraced Zora, holding her tightly as if she could impart 27 years' worth of protection in one hug. "I'm going to fix this," she promised, "and then we'll figure out what comes next, together." The secure phone buzzed with a message from A. "Car will collect you at 5. Bring only essentials." 5 hours later, Nia stood on the tarmac of a private airfield in New Jersey, the wind whipping her new bob across her face as she stared up at the sleek Gulfstream jet bearing the Nova Technologies logo. Nowak waited at the top of the stairs, silhouetted against the aircraft's interior lighting. Their goodbye had been harder than Nia anticipated. Zora, who had been so strong throughout the revelations, had clung to her mother with a desperation that transported Nia back to kindergarten drop-offs when her daughter had been too small to understand why they had to be apart. "I've left 3 letters in your nightstand drawer," Nia had whispered into Zora's hair. "Just in case. They explain everything. Who your father really was, who I was, what happened. There's an account number too, money I've been saving. Not much, but enough to finish school if something happens." "Nothing's going to happen," Zora had said fiercely. "You promised." The memory fresh in her mind, Nia climbed the stairs to the waiting jet, her new heels clicking on the metal steps in a rhythm that sounded like determination. "You look the part," Nowak commented as she reached the top. He wore a casual but expensive-looking outfit, dark jeans, a cashmere sweater, and a sport coat that had probably cost more than Nia's monthly rent. That was the idea, wasn't it? The interior of the jet was a study in understated luxury, butter-soft leather seats, gleaming wood surfaces, and lighting that somehow managed to be both efficient and flattering. Kovac was already aboard, along with another member of Nowak's security team whose name Nia didn't know. "We'll be the only passengers," Nowak explained, gesturing for her to take a seat. "The flight to Warsaw takes approximately 9 hours. We should arrive around noon local time tomorrow." Nia settled into one of the plush seats, stowing her small carry-on bag under the chair in front of her. It contained only essentials, a change of clothes, toiletries, the secure phone, and a small framed photo of Zora she couldn't bear to leave behind. As the jet began taxiing, a flight attendant appeared to offer drinks and explain safety procedures. Nia declined the alcohol but accepted a bottle of water, her throat suddenly dry with the reality of what they were undertaking. "Nervous about flying?" Nowak asked once they were airborne, the lights of New York receding beneath them. "Nervous about everything else," Nia admitted. "It's been 27 years since I've been in Poland. I'm not the same person who left. None of us are the people we were." Nowak's gaze drifted to the window, to the darkness beyond the glass. "The countries aren't the same either. Poland, Hungary, they've changed since we left them. Democracies now, at least on paper, EU members, but scratch the surface. And the old networks are still there," Nia finished for him, "just wearing different suits." "Exactly." He turned back to her. "Tell me about your father's case. What do you remember?" Nia closed her eyes, trying to summon memories she'd spent decades suppressing. "I was 15, more interested in boys and music than my father's work. But I remember him coming home late, night after night, the shadows under his eyes growing darker, phone calls that would make him go very quiet." "Did he discuss the case with you?" "Not in detail. He tried to shield me from it, but I remember names, snippets of conversations with colleagues who would come to the house." She hesitated. There was one name that came up often, Orłowski, Antoni Orłowski. Nowak stiffened almost imperceptibly. "You're sure of that name?" "Yes. Is it important?" Antoni Orłowski was one of the founding members of the Rona Syndicate. former intelligence officer who reinvented himself as a businessman after the fall of communism. He died in 2010. Heart attack on his yacht in Monaco. Nowak's expression was grim. At least, that's the official story. You don't believe it? I believe Orłowski was too careful, too paranoid to die a natural death. Someone wanted him out of the way. The implication hung in the air between them. Even within the Rona syndicate, there were power struggles, competing factions. If your father was building a case against Orłowski specifically, Nowak continued, that narrows our search considerably, and might explain why they're still interested in whatever evidence he collected even after all these years. Why would evidence against a dead man matter? Because Orłowski wasn't working alone. He had partners, protégés, people who are very much alive and in positions of power today. Nowak leaned forward. One of them is Tomasz Wojcik, current Minister of Economic Development in Poland. Another is Eliza Kroll, the woman who approached your daughter. The pieces were beginning to align in Nia's mind. So they're worried that whatever my father had on Orłowski could implicate them too. Exactly. And with Poland's political situation being what it is, the push for greater transparency, anti-corruption measures required by the EU, evidence of past crimes could be devastating. Nowak fixed her with an intense gaze, which is why we need to find it before they do. The flight attendant appeared with a light meal, temporarily halting their conversation. Nia ate mechanically, her mind racing with new information and old memories. After the meal, as the cabin lights dimmed to encourage sleep, Nowak moved to sit across from her, his voice lowered to ensure their privacy despite the empty cabin. There's something else we should discuss, he said. The possibility that your father was not just collecting evidence, but actively participating in a blackmail scheme. Nia's head snapped up. My father was not corrupt. I'm not suggesting he was. But consider the facts. A prosecutor with damning evidence against powerful people suddenly drops his case, sends his daughter away, and lives out the rest of his life in relative obscurity. Yet he's never harmed, never threatened again, at least not overtly. They thought I was dead, Nia countered. They had nothing to threaten him with. Or he made a deal. Evidence in exchange for your safety. A stalemate that lasted 27 years. Nowak's expression was sympathetic, but unyielding. It would explain why they're so interested in finding what he left behind even now. The suggestion felt like a betrayal of the father she remembered, principled, incorruptible. But could she really claim to know what he might have done to protect her? What compromises he might have made? If there was a deal, she said slowly, it died with him, and now they're afraid that whatever insurance policy he kept might surface. Exactly, Nowak nodded. Which brings us back to Warsaw, to whatever he hid, and to why he made sure you were on the other side of the world when he did it. The weight of those words settled over Nia like a shroud. Her father, whom she'd idolized even in absence, might have been playing a deeper game than she'd ever imagined, and she'd been both pawn and queen on his chessboard. As the jet cruised over the Atlantic, Nia finally drifted into an uneasy sleep, dreaming of burning buildings and men in shadows, of her father's voice warning her to run, to hide, to never look back. She woke with a start as the aircraft began its descent. Outside the window, the landscape of Poland spread beneath them, a patchwork of fields and forests, cities and towns, both familiar and foreign. Her birthplace, the site of her first death. Home, she whispered, the word strange on her tongue. Nowak, already awake and reviewing documents, looked up. Not anymore, remember that. You're Elena Nowak now, my assistant from our New York office. American-born, with Polish grandparents. You speak the language but aren't familiar with current customs or politics. You defer to me in meetings and take notes without contributing. The reminder of her role centered her. This wasn't a homecoming. It was an infiltration. Understood. We'll be met at the airport by my Polish executive team. They believe we're here to review operations at our Warsaw facility. Standard corporate visit, meetings scheduled, dinners arranged. He handed her a tablet. This contains your daily schedule, contact information for our local team, and background on everyone we'll be meeting. Nia took the device, impressed despite herself by the thoroughness of the preparations. And our actual mission? Begins tonight, after the official duties are completed. Nowak straightened his cuffs, a gesture Nia was beginning to recognize as a habit when he was planning. I've arranged for us to stay at the Bristol Hotel. It's centrally located, well secured, and, most importantly, 3 blocks from your father's old apartment building. The proximity sent a chill through Nia. You think there might still be something there, after all this time? The apartment has been sealed since his death. Officially, it's tied up in probate, awaiting a claim from next of kin. There was a hint of satisfaction in his voice. Unofficially, I arranged for a probate delay through certain legal channels, keeping it preserved until we could investigate. The extent of Nowak's planning, the years he'd spent preparing for this moment, was both reassuring and unsettling. How long had he known about her? How long had he been arranging the pieces on the board? We land in 20 minutes, he said, checking his watch. From this moment forward, we're being watched. Every word, every gesture, every expression must support our cover. Nia nodded, mentally stepping into the role of Elena Novak, competent assistant. Just another persona to adopt, another skin to inhabit. She'd had decades of practice at being someone else. As the plane touched down on Polish soil, Nia felt a seismic shift within herself, tectonic plates of identity grinding against each other. Nia Walker, Natalia Walczak, Elena Novak, names layered like geological strata, each representing a different life, a different self. And somewhere beneath them all, buried like treasure or a time bomb, lay the truth her father had died protecting. Warsaw awaited, its skyline visible through the jet's window, modern glass towers rising alongside Soviet-era blocks, and the meticulously reconstructed Old Town, a city of contradictions, of destruction and rebirth, of secrets buried and unearthed. Just like her. Warsaw had changed. Of course it had. 27 years was a lifetime. The city that greeted Nia as they drove from the airport bore little resemblance to the place she'd fled as a teenager. Glass skyscrapers reached toward the clouds, international brands advertised from billboards, and the streets teemed with late-model cars instead of the sputtering communist-era vehicles she remembered. Yet beneath the modern veneer, she could still sense the Warsaw of her youth, the particular quality of light filtering through chestnut trees along certain boulevards, the distinctive silhouette of the Palace of Culture and Science, Stalin's unwanted gift to the Polish people. The rhythm of the language surrounding her, so familiar it made her chest ache. "You're quiet," Nowak observed from beside her in the back seat of the Mercedes that had met them at the airport. He spoke in English, maintaining their cover even in private. "Just taking it all in," Nia replied, forcing herself to sound casual. "It's changed so much." "The surface has changed," he agreed. "The foundations remain the same." Their driver, a stern-faced woman who had been introduced simply as Basia, navigated the city center with practiced ease. In the front passenger seat sat Dariusz Malinowski, the chief operating officer of Nova Technologies' Polish subsidiary, who had greeted them with professional warmth at the arrivals gate. "We've arranged a brief tour of the facility this afternoon," Malinowski was saying, consulting his tablet. "Followed by dinner with the executive team at Amber Room. Tomorrow morning, presentations from each department head, lunch with potential investors, and an evening reception at the British Embassy, where several government officials have expressed interest in meeting you, Mr. Nowak." "Excellent," Nowak responded smoothly. "Elena will coordinate any changes to the schedule if necessary." Nia nodded, playing her part. "I've synced all appointments to your secure calendar, Mr. Nowak." The car pulled up to the Bristol Hotel, a historic landmark that had hosted everyone from Cold War diplomats to modern celebrities. A doorman in an immaculate uniform rushed forward to open their door. "We'll collect you at 2 for the facility tour," Malinowski said as they exited the vehicle. "Will you require anything in the meantime?" "Just time to freshen up after the flight," Nowak replied. "Elena, confirm our dinner reservation for 8 this evening." The hotel lobby was a study in old-world elegance. Marble floors, crystal chandeliers, antique furniture that had likely witnessed a century of Warsaw's turbulent history. As they checked in, Nia maintained her professional demeanor, but her eyes catalogued every exit, every security camera, every person whose gaze lingered too long on them. Their suites were adjacent on the 4th floor, connected by an internal door for business convenience, as the concierge explained with practiced discretion. Nia's room was smaller but no less luxurious than Nowak's, with tall windows overlooking Krakowskie Przedmieście, one of Warsaw's most historic streets. Once alone, she moved methodically through the space, checking for listening devices or signs of disturbance using the techniques Nowak had taught her during the flight. Finding nothing suspicious, she unpacked her minimal belongings and changed into a fresh blouse, maintaining the polished appearance expected of a high-level executive assistant. A soft knock came at the connecting door. She opened it to find Nowak, jacket removed and sleeves rolled up, a tablet in his hand. "Secure," he said without preamble, stepping into her room. "I've activated countermeasures for both suites. We can speak freely." "Do you really think they've had time to bug the rooms? We only confirmed our visit 3 days ago." 3 days is an eternity for people with the right connections. He moved to the window, looking out at the street below. "How are you holding up?" The question caught her off guard. In their preparations, Nowak had been all business, focused entirely on the mission. This hint of personal concern seemed out of character. "I'm fine," she said automatically. He turned, fixing her with a look that said he didn't believe her. "Being back here can't be easy, especially under these circumstances." Nia sighed, allowing a crack in her professional facade. "It's disorienting, like walking through a dream where everything is almost right but not quite." She joined him at the window. "That church across the street, I used to pass it every day on my way to school. There was a flower seller on the corner, an old woman who would give me a carnation if I recited poetry for her. And now? Now it's a Starbucks." She shook her head. "Progress, I suppose." Nowak was silent for a moment, his expression softening almost imperceptibly. "The past never stays where we leave it. Neither do we." The observation was unexpectedly philosophical, revealing a glimpse of the man beneath the carefully constructed persona of the ruthless businessman. Before Nia could respond, he returned to business. "Tonight, after the corporate dinner, we make our first move." He handed her the tablet. "Here's the plan." The screen showed a detailed map of a residential neighborhood in Praga, across the Vistula River from their current location. A red dot marked a specific building. "Your father's apartment," Nowak explained. "Officially still in probate, as I mentioned. Unofficially sealed by interests who want to ensure nothing sensitive leaves the premises." He swiped to reveal architectural plans of the building. "The security is minimal. A new lock on the door. Basic alarm system. Nothing we can't handle." "We're breaking in?" Nia asked, surprised, despite herself. Somehow she'd expected Nowak's resources to provide a more legitimate entry. "We're exercising the property rights of the legal heir." His smile was thin. "Which, technically, you are. Even though I'm legally dead." "Death is just a bureaucratic designation, one that can be corrected with the right documentation." He reached into his jacket's inner pocket and withdrew an envelope, "which I happen to have prepared." Inside the envelope, Nia found a Polish identity card and passport in the name of Natalia Walczak, with her photograph and correct birth date. The documents looked authentic in every detail. "How did you—" "Better not to ask." Nowak tapped the tablet screen, returning to the building plans. The apartment is on the third floor. 2 bedrooms, 1 bathroom, a combined living and dining area. Your father lived there alone after your supposed death. According to my sources, it remains largely unchanged since the 1990s. Nia studied the layout. Memories surfacing of Sunday morning breakfasts at the small kitchen table, of doing homework on the living room floor while her father read case files in his armchair, of the view from her bedroom window of the courtyard where neighborhood children played. If he hid something there, she said, it would have been found by now. The Rona would have searched the place after his death. Undoubtedly. But they were looking for specific evidence, documents, photographs, recordings. What if what he left behind wasn't so obvious? What if it was something only you would recognize or understand? The suggestion sparked something in Nia's mind, a half-forgotten memory of her father teaching her to play chess, explaining that the best hiding place was often in plain sight, that the key to a good strategy was thinking 3 moves ahead while making your opponent focus on the pieces visible on the board. It's possible, she conceded, but risky. If they're watching the building, they are. Nowak's expression was grim, which is why we'll enter during the embassy reception tomorrow night. While the social and political elite of Warsaw are focused on us at the British Embassy, Kovac will create a diversion in another part of the city, something to draw away anyone watching the apartment building. The plan was detailed, precise, accounting for variables and contingencies that Nia wouldn't have considered. Once again, she was struck by the extent of Nowak's preparation, the years he must have spent planning for this moment. "You've thought of everything," she said. "Not everything, just the moves I can anticipate." His gaze was penetrating. "The unpredictable factor is what we'll find there, and how you'll react to being back in the space you last saw as a child." The observation was uncomfortably perceptive. Nia hadn't allowed herself to consider the emotional impact of returning to the apartment where she'd grown up, where she'd last seen her father, where her life as Natalia Walczak had ended. Before she could formulate a response, Nowak's phone chimed with a message. "Malinowski," he said, checking the screen. "The car will be here in 30 minutes for the facility tour." "I'll be ready," Nia assured him, grateful for the return to practical matters. "Remember, at the facility, we're being evaluated by everyone. Security personnel, administrative staff, executives. Maintain your cover at all times." He moved toward the connecting door. "And Nia, prepare yourself for familiar faces. Warsaw is a smaller city than it appears, especially in certain circles." The warning sent a chill through her. "You think someone might recognize me? After all this time? I think memory is a powerful and unpredictable force." Nowak paused at the threshold. "If someone does seem to recognize you, neither confirm nor deny. Deflect, redirect, maintain ambiguity. Let them question their own recollection." After he left, Nia stood at the window again, watching the flow of people along the historic street below. Somewhere in this city were people who had wanted her father silenced, who believed she had died in a fire 27 years ago, who would not hesitate to make that fiction a reality if they discovered the truth. And somewhere, too, was the evidence her father had hidden. Evidence worth killing for, worth dying for, worth sending his only child to the other side of the world for. The Nova Technologies facility occupied the top 5 floors of a sleek office tower in Warsaw's business district. As their car approached, Nia noted the subtle but comprehensive security measures, cameras positioned at every entrance, guards whose casual demeanor didn't quite mask their alertness, access points limited and controlled. "Impressive operation," Nowak commented as Malinowski led them through the marble-floored lobby toward a private elevator. "We've expanded significantly since the acquisition," Malinowski replied with evident pride. 300 employees now, with plans to add another 50 by year's end. The elevator required both a key card and fingerprint authentication. As they ascended, Nia maintained her professional mask, but her mind was cataloging every detail. If Nova had been a Rona asset before Nowak acquired it, some of those connections likely remained within the company infrastructure. Anyone could be a potential threat or a potential ally. The executive floor was a study in modern corporate design: open spaces, glass-walled conference rooms, ergonomic workstations. Staff members looked up with carefully cultivated expressions of respectful interest as Malinowski led them on a tour. "And this is our development team," he said, gesturing to a cluster of engineers huddled around computer screens. "They're finalizing the security protocols for the new government contract." A man in his 60s looked up from a nearby desk, his eyes passing over Nowak before settling on Nia. He frowned slightly, the expression of someone trying to place a half-remembered face. Nia maintained her neutral expression, but her pulse quickened. The man was older, heavier, his hair now white instead of the dark brown she remembered, but she recognized him. Henryk Adamski, one of her father's colleagues from the prosecutor's office. He had come to their apartment for dinner once a month, bringing candy for Natalia and case files for her father. His eyes widened almost imperceptibly as recognition dawned. Nia gave him a polite, impersonal smile, the kind an executive assistant might offer to any employee, and turned her attention back to Malinowski's explanations. But she could feel Adamski's gaze following her as they moved through the space, and she knew with certainty that their carefully constructed plan had just encountered its first complication. The past, it seemed, had recognized her, even if she had spent 27 years trying to forget it. "Someone recognized you." Nowak's voice was low but sharp as they rode the elevator back down to the lobby after the tour. Malinowski had stepped out on another floor to handle an urgent call, leaving them momentarily alone. "Henryk Adamski," Nia confirmed, keeping her expression neutral for the benefit of the security cameras. "He worked with my father, used to come to our apartment for dinner." "How certain are you that he recognized you?" "Certain enough." She adjusted her tablet in her arms, a casual movement that allowed her to shift closer to Nowak without appearing intentional. "What do we do?" "Nothing for now. Deviation from the plan would only confirm his suspicions." The elevator doors opened onto the lobby. "We proceed as scheduled, but we'll need to accelerate our timeline." Malinowski was waiting for them, his earlier urgency now hidden behind a professional smile. "I apologize for the interruption, Mr. Nowak. Shall we proceed to the R&D department?" "Of course." As they continued the tour, Nia caught several furtive glances in her direction from staff members who had no apparent reason to be interested in an executive assistant. Word was spreading. Adamski had shared his suspicions with others. The remainder of the afternoon unfolded according to schedule. Meetings with department heads, presentations on quarterly projections, discussions of market strategy. Nia played her part with practiced poise, taking notes, anticipating Nowak's needs, speaking only when directly addressed. But beneath her composed exterior, her mind was racing, calculating risks, revising plans. By the time they returned to the hotel to prepare for the executive dinner, Nia's nerves were stretched to breaking point. The moment the suite door closed behind them, she turned to Nowak. "We need to move faster. If Adamski recognized me, others will too. It's only a matter of time before word reaches the Rona." "Already handled." Nowak loosened his tie. "The apartment visit has been moved up to tonight, immediately after the dinner. Kovac is arranging the diversion now." The ease with which he adapted to the changed circumstances was both reassuring and unsettling. "And the embassy reception tomorrow?" "We'll attend briefly, establish our presence, then develop sudden business in another part of the city." He checked his watch. "We have 90 minutes before dinner. You should rest." Rest was impossible. Nia spent the time reviewing maps of her old neighborhood, refreshing her memory of the building's layout, and examining old photographs of her father that Nowak had somehow obtained. In one, taken at a public function just months before his death, Stefan Walczak looked far older than his years, his once commanding presence diminished by time and, perhaps, by the weight of the secrets he'd carried. The executive dinner was held in a private room at Amber Room, one of Warsaw's most exclusive restaurants. Crystal chandeliers cast a warm glow over the assembled Polish management team, all eager to impress their American owner. Nia recognized the social dynamics immediately, the hierarchies, the alliances, the subtle competitions playing out in seating arrangements and conversation patterns. She maintained her professional distance, seated at Nowak's right hand but participating minimally in the discussion. Her attention was divided between her role and subtle surveillance of the room. Twice, she noted servers who lingered too long near their table. Once, she caught sight of a diner in the main restaurant whose interest in their private room seemed more than casual. "They're watching us," she murmured to Nowak during a moment when the others were distracted by the arrival of a new course. "Of course they are." His smile never faltered as he turned to answer a question from the chief financial officer. To anyone observing, they appeared to be an employer and his assistant exchanging a brief work-related comment. The meal proceeded without incident. Exquisite food that Nia barely tasted, wine she pretended to sip, conversation that flowed around her like water around a stone. Beneath the table, her fingers found the reassuring weight of the secure phone in her pocket, its connection to Zora a lifeline to reality in this surreal environment. As coffee was served, Malinowski raised his glass in a toast. To Mr. Nowak and the continued success of Nova Technologies in Poland. The others joined enthusiastically, but Nia noticed a certain tension in some of their expressions. Not everyone at the table was pleased by Nowak's presence in Warsaw, it seemed. By 10:30, the dinner was winding down. Nowak made a show of checking his watch and stifling a yawn. "I'm afraid jet lag is catching up with me," he announced. "Elena and I should return to the hotel. We have a full schedule tomorrow." Malinowski immediately stood. "Of course, I'll arrange for the car." "No need." Nowak waved him back to his seat. "Please, finish your evening. The hotel is just a short walk, and after the long flight I could use the fresh air." Outside, the May evening was mild, the streets still busy with people enjoying the late spring weather. Nia and Nowak walked side by side, maintaining a professional distance, their pace unhurried despite the urgency of their true mission. "We're being followed," Nia said quietly, not turning her head. "Two men, gray jackets, 20 meters back." "I know." Nowak guided her around a corner onto a less crowded street. "They've been with us since the restaurant. Corporate security, most likely. Malinowski's people? Or someone else within Nova who reports to other interests." He checked his watch. "Kovac should be in position. We need to lose our tail before we head to the apartment." They maintained their casual pace for another block before Nowak suddenly placed his hand at the small of Nia's back, leaning in as if sharing an intimate comment. "There's a metro station ahead. When we reach it, laugh as if I've said something amusing, then follow my lead." Nia did as instructed, producing a convincing laugh just as they neared the entrance to the station. Nowak's arm slid more fully around her waist, his body language shifting from professional to intimate in a heartbeat. To any observer, they now appeared to be a couple, perhaps slightly intoxicated from dinner, enjoying a romantic evening. They descended the steps into the station, where Nowak purchased 2 tickets from a machine with practiced efficiency. The men following them had no choice but to do the same, becoming visible as they hurried to keep up. The platform was crowded. A concert must have just ended somewhere nearby, judging by the number of young people in band t-shirts. Nowak guided Nia through the throng, positioning them near the edge of the platform as a train approached. "Now," he murmured as the doors opened. They boarded with the surge of concert-goers, Nowak maneuvering them to the far side of the packed car. Their pursuers just managed to squeeze aboard before the doors closed. The train began to move. "Next stop," Nowak said close to her ear. "Be ready." When the train pulled into the following station, they remained in place as passengers shifted around them. At the last possible moment, just as the doors were closing, Nowak gripped Nia's hand and pulled her through the narrowing gap onto the platform. Their pursuers lunged forward too late, their frustrated expressions visible through the windows as the train pulled away. "They'll get off at the next station and double back," Nowak said, already leading her toward a different exit than the one they'd entered through. "We have maybe 10 minutes. Outside, a nondescript sedan waited at the curb, its engine running. Kovac sat behind the wheel, his expression impassive as they slid into the back seat. "Clear?" Nowak asked. "For now." Kovac pulled away from the curb. "The diversion is in place. Fire alarm at the Ministry of Justice. Every security service in the area is responding." "Perfect timing." Nowak turned to Nia. "Your father's building is 5 minutes from here. Are you ready?" The question had layers. Was she ready for the tactical aspects of entering the apartment? Was she ready to face whatever they might find there? Was she ready to confront the physical space where her childhood had ended? "Yes," she said simply, because any other answer would have required more vulnerability than she was willing to display. The neighborhood had changed less than the city center. The same Soviet-era apartment blocks, the same small shops at street level, even the same pattern of streetlights casting pools of yellow illumination at regular intervals. Nia felt a visceral recognition as they drove past a small park where she had played as a child, past the corner store where she had bought ice cream with coins her father gave her on summer evenings. Kovac parked a block from the Target building. 15 minutes, he told them. That's how long the diversion will hold their attention. More than enough time for a preliminary search, Nowak said, checking that the street was clear before opening his door. Stay with the car. Be ready to move quickly if needed. Nia followed Nowak along the darkened street, their footsteps unnaturally loud in her ears. The building looked exactly as she remembered it. 6 stories of institutional architecture, a central entrance with a heavy door, windows like grid points on a faded facade. The entry code her father had used was long outdated, but Nowak produced a small electronic device that interfaced with the security panel. After a few seconds, the lock clicked open. Residents Association upgraded the system but used the default master code, he explained in response to Nia's questioning look. Amateur security is often worse than none at all. The lobby smelled of cabbage and cigarette smoke, scents so familiar they sent Nia hurtling back in time. For a disorienting moment, she was 15 again, returning from school, her bag heavy with books, her mind on homework and friends, and the normal concerns of a teenage girl whose life was about to be shattered. "Third floor," Nowak reminded her gently, breaking the spell. They took the stairs rather than risk the noisy elevator. The stairwell was dimly lit, the walls painted the same institutional green Nia remembered from her childhood. Each step seemed to carry her deeper into the past. Apartment 3C was at the end of the corridor, its door indistinguishable from the others except for the newer lock that had been installed after her father's death. Nowak made quick work of it with another electronic tool, his movements efficient and practiced. "Stay behind me," he whispered as the door swung open, "and be prepared, it won't be as you remember it." He was wrong. As they stepped inside, closing the door silently behind them, Nia was struck by how little had changed. The same furniture, the same layout, even the same faded curtains at the windows. It was as if time had stopped in this apartment 27 years ago, preserving it like a museum exhibit of her former life. The air was stale, dust particles dancing in the beam of the small flashlight Nowak produced from his pocket. He swept the light around the entryway, revealing a small table where mail had once been placed, hooks on the wall where coats had hung, a mirror that reflected their shadowy figures. "Electricity is off," he murmured. "Expected but inconvenient. We'll have to work with minimal light." Nia nodded, unable to speak past the lump in her throat. Being back in this space, the site of so many memories, both cherished and painful, was more overwhelming than she had anticipated. The physical reality of the apartment made the past immediate in a way that memories alone could not. Where would he have hidden something? Nowak asked, directing the beam toward the living room. Something that would survive time, that others wouldn't find in a standard search? Nia forced herself to think, to push past emotion and focus on the task. He was methodical, logical. He would have put it somewhere related to its contents. She moved further into the apartment, muscle memory guiding her through the familiar space. His study would be the obvious place, which means it's the last place he would use. The flashlight's beam followed her as she moved to the living room bookshelf, crowded with legal texts, history books, and her father's collection of classic literature. He loved puzzles, she said, running her fingers along the spines. Chess, logic problems, riddles. He used to say that the best hiding place is the one nobody thinks to look for because it's too obvious. Something clicked in her memory, a conversation long forgotten, a casual comment that suddenly seemed significant. "The family Bible," she said, turning to Nowak. Every Easter, he would take it down and read from it, even though he wasn't particularly religious. He said tradition was important, that our heritage was in those pages. Nowak directed the light toward the top shelf, where a large, ornate book lay flat, its leather binding cracked with age. "That one?" Nia nodded, reaching up to carefully remove the heavy tome. As a child, she had needed a stool to reach it. Now it came easily to her adult height. The book was dusty, its pages yellowed with time. She set it on the coffee table and gently opened the cover. The first page contained the family registry, births, marriages, deaths recorded in her father's precise handwriting. She saw her own birth date, her mother's death when Nia was 8, but nothing after that. No record of her supposed death in the fire. "Look," Nowak said, pointing to something tucked into the binding. A small folded piece of paper protruded slightly from between pages. With trembling fingers, Nia opened the Bible to that spot. The book of Exodus, the story of Moses leading his people out of slavery. The paper was a handwritten note in her father's distinctive script, "For my swallow, if you ever return to the nest." The truth lies where we searched for Easter eggs in '93. You asked why we looked for symbols of new life in a place of endings. Remember my answer. "What does it mean?" Nowak asked, his voice hushed in the stillness of the apartment. Nia closed her eyes, reaching back through decades to a springtime memory. Her father taking her to the cemetery where her mother was buried, hiding colorful eggs among the gravestones, her childish confusion at the juxtaposition of celebration and mourning. "Life and death are not opposites, but parts of the same cycle," she murmured, recalling his words. "We honor those who came before by continuing to live, to grow, to celebrate. There is no more fitting place to celebrate renewal than where we remember endings." Her eyes opened, newfound clarity pushing aside the fog of nostalgia. "The cemetery," she said. "He hid something at my mother's grave." Time was running out. Kovac's diversion wouldn't hold the attention of Warsaw's security services forever, and Nia could feel each second ticking away like a physical pressure against her skin. "We need to go," Nowak said, already moving toward the door. "Now." "Wait." Nia carefully replaced the Bible on the shelf exactly as they'd found it. Her gaze swept over the apartment one last time. The faded armchair where her father had read case files late into the night, the small kitchen table where they'd shared countless meals, the narrow hallway leading to the bedrooms. Details she had locked away for 27 years now vivid before her. Nowak touched her elbow gently. "Nia, we can't stay." She nodded, forcing herself back to the present. "The cemetery is in Powązki, about 20 minutes from here." "Too far for tonight," Nowak decided as they slipped back into the corridor, locking the apartment door behind them. "The diversion will be contained soon. We'll go tomorrow during the day when visitors are expected and will attract less attention." The stairwell was still deserted as they descended. Outside, the street remained quiet, the only movement a stray cat prowling along a row of trash bins. They walked quickly back to where Kovac waited with the car, sliding into the back seat with practiced efficiency. "Any problems?" Kovac asked, pulling away from the curb before the doors were fully closed. "None." Nowak checked his watch. "The timing? Perfect. Fire department is just clearing the ministry building now. Security services are returning to regular patrols." Kovac navigated through the darkened streets, taking a circuitous route back toward the city center. "Did you find what you were looking for?" "We found a direction," Nowak replied. "We'll need to visit Powązki Cemetery tomorrow." Kovac's eyes met Nia's in the rearview mirror, a question in them. "Your mother?" She nodded, unsurprised that he knew this detail of her history. Nowak's research had been thorough. It made sense that his closest security officer would be briefed on key aspects of her background. "We'll need a legitimate reason to be visiting the cemetery instead of attending scheduled corporate events," Nowak mused, "a narrative that won't raise suspicions." "Family obligation," Nia suggested. "You're accompanying me to pay respects to distant relatives. It's a common enough courtesy when bringing Polish-American staff back to Warsaw." "Plausible," Kovac agreed. "I'll adjust the schedule, inform Malinowski that Mr. Nowak has personal commitments for a portion of the afternoon." They rode in silence for several minutes, each lost in thought. The city drifted past the windows, modern sections giving way to older neighborhoods, then back to contemporary developments in an architectural patchwork that mirrored Poland's complicated history. "We were followed from the restaurant," Nowak said suddenly. "Corporate security, possibly reporting to elements within Nova with connections to the Rona. We need to know who recognized you at the facility today, who Adamski might have spoken to." "I can run background on all staff present during the tour," Kovac offered. "Cross-reference with historical connections to the Rona entities you've identified." "Do it," Nowak agreed. "And increase surveillance on Adamski himself. If he's reaching out to former Rona contacts about Natalia Walczak's apparent resurrection, I want to know immediately." The plan was taking shape, methodical, tactical, but Nia's mind was already in Powązki Cemetery, standing before her mother's grave for the first time in nearly 3 decades, searching for whatever her father had hidden there. Back at the hotel, they maintained their professional facade through the lobby and elevator ride, parting at their respective suite doors with a formal "Good night, Mr. Nowak," and "See you in the morning, Elena," for the benefit of the security cameras. Only once inside her suite, after another thorough check for surveillance devices, did Nia allow herself to exhale. Sleep was impossible. Instead, she stood at the window, looking out at the Warsaw night, lights twinkling across the cityscape like earthbound stars. The secure phone in her hand connected her to a world that felt increasingly distant. Her life as Nia Walker, her apartment in New York, her career at the Sovereign. She texted Zora, safe in Warsaw, following important leads. "How are you holding up?" The response came quickly. "I'm okay. Bored but safe. Reading about Polish history to understand what you're dealing with." "Be careful, Mom." The exchange was deliberately vague, mindful of digital security. Even on the secure devices Nowak had provided, they were cautious. No names, no specific details. Nia set the phone aside and opened her laptop, bringing up the information Nowak had compiled about the Powązki Cemetery. Maps, historical records, notable burials. She studied the section where her mother's grave was located, memorizing the pathways and landmarks, planning the most efficient approach. A soft knock at the connecting door interrupted her research. Nowak stood on the threshold, jacket and tie removed, a tumbler of amber liquid in his hand. "I thought you might still be awake," he said. "There's something we should discuss before tomorrow." She gestured him in, closing the laptop. "What is it?" "The possibility that what we find is not what we expect." He settled into an armchair, swirling his drink. "We've been operating under the assumption that your father hid evidence against the Rona syndicate. Documents, recordings, something that could expose their operations and implicate current power players. That's been our working theory, yes. But there's another possibility. Nowak took a careful sip of his drink. That what he hid was something more personal, something specifically related to you. The suggestion caught Nia off guard. What do you mean? Consider the facts. He sent you away right before the fire that supposedly killed you. He maintained that fiction for the rest of his life, even after the immediate danger passed. He left a clue in a family Bible, addressed specifically to you, leading to your mother's grave. Nowak leaned forward. What if the secret he was protecting wasn't evidence against the Rona, but the truth about why they wanted you in the first place? A cold weight settled in Nia's stomach. I was 15, a high school student. I wasn't involved in any of it. Perhaps not knowingly. Nowak's expression was grave. But in my research on your father's case, I found references to a witness, a young witness, who had seen something critical, someone the prosecution was protecting. The implication hung in the air between them. Nia searched her memory for anything that would support or refute Nowak's theory. Had she seen something? Heard something? Been somewhere she shouldn't have been? I don't remember anything like that, she said finally. If I witnessed something important, wouldn't my father have told me, prepared me? Not if he thought ignorance was safer for you, not if he feared that your knowledge made you a target. Nowak set his glass down. It would explain his urgency in getting you out of Poland, his willingness to sacrifice his case to protect you. The theory was unsettling, shifting the foundation of Nia's understanding of her own history. If Nowak was right, she had been central to the mystery all along. Not just a daughter protected from her father's enemies, but a key piece in the puzzle that had shaped both their lives. We'll know tomorrow, she said, her voice steadier than she felt. One way or another. Yes. Nowak rose. Try to get some rest. Tomorrow will be challenging. After he left, Nia returned to the window, but her focus had turned inward. She sifted through childhood memories, searching for anything unusual, any incident that might have made her a witness to something the Rona Syndicate would kill to keep hidden. Nothing surfaced except ordinary moments of a prosecutor's daughter's life. School, friends, family dinners, occasional visits to her father's office. That last thought snagged on something. Visits to the prosecutor's office. There had been many over the years, especially after her mother died and childcare arrangements sometimes fell through. She had spent hours drawing at a spare desk, doing homework in empty conference rooms, reading books in her father's office while he worked late. Had she seen something during one of those visits? Overheard a conversation? Glimpsed a document or photograph she wasn't meant to see? The memory remained elusive, slipping away like water through cupped hands. Dawn was breaking over Warsaw when Nia finally lay down, exhaustion overcoming anxiety. She dreamed of gravestones and hidden messages, of her father's voice warning her to run, and of fires that consumed everything but the truth. The corporate breakfast with Nova's marketing team passed in a blur, Nia playing her role of efficient assistant, while her mind remained fixed on the afternoon's mission. Nowak was masterful, she had to admit, fully engaged in business discussions while simultaneously planning their covert operation. No one would have guessed that his questions about quarterly projections and market penetration were merely a cover for more urgent concerns. By noon, they were in a taxi heading away from the Nova offices toward Pawonsky Cemetery. Nia had changed from her business attire into something more appropriate for a personal visit, a simple dark dress and flat shoes. Nowak, too, had adjusted his appearance, replacing his power suit with more subdued clothing. Kovac has arranged for a car to meet us at the southern entrance, Nowak informed her as the taxi navigated through midday traffic. He's also monitoring communications at Nova. So far, no unusual activity, but Adamski called in sick today. Convenient, Nia remarked. Indeed. Surveillance shows he left his apartment an hour ago, destination unknown. We're proceeding under the assumption that our timeline has been compromised. The cemetery came into view, an expansive necropolis dating back to the late 18th century, its entry marked by a monumental gateway. Crosses, angels, and elaborate mausoleums rose among ancient trees, creating a city of the dead parallel to the living metropolis around it. The taxi dropped them at the main entrance, where tourists and locals alike streamed through the gates, some carrying flowers or candles for loved ones, others armed with cameras to capture the historic monuments. Nia hesitated at the threshold, a wave of emotion washing over her. The last time she had stood in this spot, she had been a child holding her father's hand, coming to lay flowers on her mother's grave. Now, she returned as a grown woman, a mother herself, seeking not closure, but revelation. "Are you all right?" Nowak asked quietly. "Yes." She squared her shoulders. "My mother is in the newer section to the east, about a 10-minute walk." They moved through the cemetery with purposeful steps, blending with other visitors. Nowak maintained a respectful distance, allowing Nia to lead the way through the labyrinth of graves and monuments. Despite the years, her feet remembered the path, turning at familiar landmarks: a towering angel with outstretched wings, a mausoleum carved with flowers, a row of uniform military headstones. The newer section was less ornate but still beautifully maintained, with neat pathways between rows of more modern graves. Nia slowed as they approached a modest headstone of polished granite. Anna Walczak, 1948-1986, beloved wife and mother, rest in the peace you created for others. Nia knelt before the grave, genuine emotion overwhelming her strategic purpose. She traced the engraved name with her fingertips, tears blurring her vision. "Hello, Mama," she whispered in Polish. "I'm sorry it took so long to come back." Nowak stood a respectful distance away, his gaze scanning the cemetery for anyone showing undue interest in their presence. His hand rested casually in his jacket pocket, where Nia knew he carried a weapon. After allowing herself a moment of genuine grief, Nia refocused on their mission. What had her father hidden here? The grave itself was simple: a headstone, a small plot of earth where flowers might be planted, a concrete border defining the space. Nothing unusual, nothing that screamed secret hiding place. "Your father's clue," Nowak prompted softly. "About Easter eggs. Where specifically did he hide them?" Nia closed her eyes, reaching back through time to that spring day in 1993. She had been 12, still mourning a mother 4 years gone. Her father had brought her here with a basket of painted eggs, a tradition he insisted on maintaining despite his own grief. "There," she said, pointing to a small decorative urn set into the concrete border of the grave. "He always put one there, said it was her favorite spot because you could see the sunrise from this angle." Together they moved to examine the urn, a simple stone vessel meant for flowers, now empty and dry. Nowak knelt beside it, running his fingers along the rim, then reaching inside. "It's loose," he murmured, working the urn gently. After a moment it lifted free from its setting, revealing a cavity beneath. Nia's breath caught in her throat. With careful movements, Nowak reached into the space and withdrew a small metal container, tarnished with age but intact. It was sealed with what appeared to be wax, preserving whatever was inside from moisture and decay. "We shouldn't open it here," Nowak said, slipping the container into his jacket. "Too exposed." As he replaced the urn, a movement at the edge of Nia's vision caught her attention. A man in a dark coat was walking along a parallel path, his pace too measured to be a casual visitor, his attention too fixed on the area around them. "We're being watched," she murmured, rising from her kneeling position. 2 o'clock, dark coat." Nowak didn't turn to look. "Another at your 7, by the cypress tree. Time to leave." They began walking unhurriedly toward the nearest exit, maintaining the appearance of mourners who had completed their visit. Nia looped her arm through Nowak's, leaning into him slightly as if seeking comfort, a posture that would appear natural while allowing them to speak without being observed. "How did they find us?" she asked, her lips barely moving. "Either we were followed from the hotel, or—" Nowak broke off, his body tensing almost imperceptibly. "The grave was already under surveillance. They've been waiting for someone to come looking." The realization was chilling. After all these years, the Rona Syndicate had known, or at least suspected, that Stefan Walczak had hidden something at his wife's grave. They had been patient, content to wait until the right person came searching. And now that person, Natalia Walczak herself, had walked right into their trap. The cemetery paths stretched before them, each intersection offering choices that could lead to escape or confrontation. Nia's heart hammered against her ribs as she maintained the facade of a grieving daughter, her arm linked through Nowak's, her pace deliberately unhurried, despite every instinct screaming at her to run. "Kovacs is at the south entrance," Nowak murmured, his lips barely moving. "We need to create distance from our pursuers without alerting them that we've spotted them." "There's a mausoleum up ahead," Nia replied just as quietly. "Large one with the angel statues. It's a popular spot for tourists. We could lose ourselves in a group." The men following them had multiplied, or perhaps they had simply become more visible. Nia counted 4 now, positioned at strategic points along the paths, maintaining distance but inexorably closing the net around them. They approached the mausoleum, an ornate 19th-century structure where a tour guide was leading a group of visitors through a rehearsed speech about the aristocratic family entombed within. Nowak and Nia smoothly integrated themselves at the edge of the group, their dark clothing and solemn demeanor indistinguishable from other cemetery visitors. One of their pursuers paused at a respectful distance, pretending to examine a nearby headstone. Another circled to the opposite side of the mausoleum, effectively blocking a potential exit route. "They're not trying to hide anymore," Nia whispered. "They want us to know we're surrounded." "They want me to know," Nowak corrected. "They don't know who you are yet, just that someone visited Anna Walczak's grave and recovered something. To them, you're just my assistant." The realization shifted Nia's understanding of their tactical position. She wasn't the primary target, at least not yet. "Give me the container," she said. Nowak shot her a sharp look. "They're watching you more closely than me," she explained. "And I know this cemetery better than you do. There's a maintenance building near the south wall with a service entrance. Staff use it as a shortcut." After a moment's calculation, Nowak gave a slight nod. As the tour group shifted to view another aspect of the mausoleum, he smoothly passed the metal container to Nia, who slipped it into her purse. "I'll create a diversion," he said. "Make your way to Kovacs. If I'm not there in 15 minutes, leave without me." "That wasn't the plan." "The plan changed the moment they spotted us." His voice was calm, but brooked no argument. "The container is what matters. Get it somewhere secure." Before she could protest further, Nowak made a show of checking his watch and muttering something about a business meeting. He stepped away from the tour group, pulling out his phone as if making a call, and walked purposefully toward the main path, directly into the sightline of their observers. The effect was immediate. 3 of the 4 men adjusted their positions, attention firmly fixed on Nowak as he strode confidently toward the west entrance, the opposite direction from their planned exit. Nia waited until the tour moved again, then slipped away from the group, choosing a narrow path between rows of ancient graves that led toward the maintenance area she'd mentioned. The weight of the container in her purse felt disproportionate to its size, as if the secrets it contained had physical mass. A quick glance over her shoulder confirmed that the 4th man had noticed her departure and was now moving to follow her. Unlike his colleagues, he made no pretense of being a casual visitor, his stride purposeful and direct. Nia increased her pace, no longer concerned with appearing natural. The paths here were less maintained, used primarily by groundskeepers. She navigated by memory and instinct, cutting between markers and monuments, using the cemetery's labyrinthine layout to her advantage. The maintenance building came into view, a low, utilitarian structure partially hidden by a stand of cypress trees. To her dismay, the door was secured with a padlock that hadn't been there in her youth. No time for subtlety. She scanned the area and spotted a groundskeeper's cart parked nearby, tools laid out as the worker tended to a fresh grave some distance away. Among them was a pair of bolt cutters. Nia moved swiftly, covering the distance to the cart in seconds. The bolt cutters were heavy but effective. The padlock yielded with a satisfying snap. She replaced the tool and slipped inside the building just as her pursuer rounded the corner of the nearest row of graves. The interior was dim and cluttered with equipment: mowers, trimmers, landscaping supplies. A narrow corridor led past a small office to a rear exit. Nia moved quickly but quietly, testing the back door. It opened onto a service alley that ran along the cemetery's south wall. Outside, the nondescript sedan Kovac had described waited at the curb, engine running. Nia approached rapidly but cautiously, alert for any sign of a trap. The passenger window lowered as she neared, revealing Kovac's watchful face. "Where's Nowak?" he asked as she slid into the back seat. "Creating a diversion. He said to leave if he's not here in 15 minutes. She checked her watch. "That gives him 8 more. Kovac nodded, his expression grim. "We're exposed here. I'm moving to the rendezvous point. If he doesn't make it, we proceed to the fallback location." As they pulled away from the curb, Nia saw the man who had been following her emerge from the maintenance building. He spoke urgently into what appeared to be a communication device, his gaze sweeping the street before settling on their departing vehicle. "We've been spotted," she reported. "He's calling it in." Kovac's response was to accelerate smoothly, turning at the next intersection and initiating a series of maneuvers designed to identify and lose any potential tail. Nia kept her eyes on the side mirrors, watching for signs of pursuit. 7 minutes later, as they idled at the designated rendezvous point 2 blocks from the cemetery's main entrance, Nowak emerged from a side street, walking briskly but unhurriedly. His tie was slightly askew and there was a smudge of dirt on his otherwise immaculate trousers, but he appeared unharmed. "Persistent," he commented as he slid into the seat beside Nia. "But predictable. They were so focused on following me that they didn't coordinate properly with the one tracking you." "Standard Rona tactic," Kovac remarked as he pulled back into traffic. "Overwhelming force, minimal strategy. They never expect their targets to fight back." "Did you get a look at any of them?" Nowak asked, straightening his tie. "Anyone we can identify?" "The one following me was young," Nia replied. "Late 20s, maybe. Not former intelligence based on his movement patterns. Private security, most likely." "Hired muscle," Nowak agreed, "which means they're still assessing the situation, not yet concerned enough to deploy their more experienced operatives." He turned to Nia. "The container?" She withdrew it from her purse. In the daylight filtering through the car's tinted windows, the metal box appeared older than she had initially thought, perhaps dating back to the 1980s, based on its design. The wax seal was intact, bearing an impression she now recognized as her father's signet ring. "Not here," Nowak cautioned as she made to break the seal. "We need a secure location, somewhere they wouldn't think to look for us." "The Nova facility," Kovac suggested. "Too obvious, and potentially compromised given Adamski's reaction yesterday." Nowak considered for a moment. "The university library, the special collections room. I have access through Nova's research grant program." The Jagiellonian library was bustling with students when they arrived, providing excellent cover as they made their way to the climate-controlled special collections area. Nowak's credentials granted them access to a private research room, a small, windowless space with a table, chairs, and most importantly, no surveillance cameras. "We have 30 minutes before questions start being asked about why we need this room for corporate research," Nowak said as Kovac took up position outside the door. "Let's see what Stefan Walczak thought was worth hiding for 27 years." With careful movements, Nia broke the wax seal and opened the container. Inside was a plastic case containing what appeared to be a micro-cassette tape, the kind used in dictation machines in the 1980s and early 1990s. Alongside it was a handwritten note in her father's precise script. For Natalia. The truth I could not tell you. Forgive me for the burden of knowledge and the years of separation. When you hear this, remember that every choice I made was to keep you safe. The evidence is in your memory. A recording, Nowak murmured. But we need a player. I saw one in the audiovisual archives when we came in, Nia said. Vintage equipment for research purposes. 15 minutes later, they had secured a functioning microcassette player and returned to the private room. With hands that trembled slightly, Nia inserted the tape and pressed play. Static filled the room, then cleared, revealing her father's voice. Younger, stronger than she remembered from their final days together, but unmistakably him. Natalia, my swallow. If you're listening to this, then you've returned to Warsaw, and I am likely gone. A pause, a heavy breath. What I am about to tell you must never be shared with anyone you do not trust with your life. It concerns what you saw on March 12, 1993, at my office. You may not remember, I did everything I could to ensure you wouldn't. But you witnessed a meeting that directly implicated Antoni Orłowski and his Rona associates in the murder of Judge Kowalski. Nia's breath caught. Judge Kowalski had been found dead in his car, an apparent suicide, weeks before she left Poland. His death had devastated her father, who had lost not just a colleague but a friend and ally in his anti-corruption efforts. The recording continued. You were doing homework in the conference room next to my office. The door was ajar. Orłowski came to threaten me, to pressure me to drop the investigation. He didn't know you were there. He admitted to arranging Kowalski's death, described details only the killer would know. When he left, you asked me who the man was with the scary eyes. The memory surfaced like a bubble from deep water. A tall man with cold eyes, her father's face pale with suppressed rage, a whispered conversation she wasn't meant to hear. I knew then that you were in danger, her father's voice continued. As a witness, even an unwitting child witness, you were a liability to them. I began making arrangements immediately, but before I could get you safely away, you drew a picture at school, a picture of a man standing beside a car with what your teacher thought was a red scarf, but was actually blood. The teacher contacted me, concerned about your morbid imagination, but she also mentioned it to her brother, who worked as security at the courthouse. Word reached Orłowski. The next day, they tried to take you from your school. The attempt failed only because I had arranged for a security detail to watch you. That night, I put you on a plane to America with a new identity. Nia felt dizzy, the room seeming to tilt around her. She had no memory of an attempted abduction, no recollection of drawing such a picture. Yet the story rang true, filling gaps in her understanding that had existed for decades. The fire was staged 3 days later, the recording went on. A body from the morgue, dental records altered by a coroner who owed me a favor. Officially, you died. It was the only way to keep you safe. The Rona believed their problem was eliminated. I let them think they had won. Nowak had been right. She had been central to the case all along, not just as Stefan Walczak's daughter, but as the only witness to Orłowski's confession. But I kept building my case, quietly, carefully. The evidence is incomplete without your testimony, but it exists. In this same container, you will find a key to a safe deposit box at Bank Handlowy. It contains documented proof of the Rona's crimes, financial records, photographs, witness statements, everything I could gather without attracting attention. With your testimony added to this evidence, even after all these years, the case against Orłowski's organization would be insurmountable. Nia looked in the container again and found, tucked into a hidden compartment, a small key wrapped in tissue paper. I don't know when you will find this, my swallow. Perhaps never. Perhaps when I am long gone. But know that I never stopped fighting for justice, and I never stopped loving you. The choice to send you away broke my heart, but keeping you safe was worth any price. If you choose to come forward with this evidence, understand the risks. The Rona Syndicate has evolved, but its nature remains the same. They will not hesitate to silence you permanently if they discover who you really are. The recording ended with a few seconds of silence, then her father's voice, softer now. Whatever you decide, Natalia, know that I am proud of the woman you have become, even from a distance. You were always stronger than you knew. The tape clicked off, leaving the room in heavy silence. Nia sat motionless, tears streaming down her face as decades of questions finally found their answers. The key, Nowak said gently after giving her a moment to process. We need to secure whatever is in that safe deposit box. Nia nodded, wiping her eyes. Bank Handlowy. The main branch would be on Senatorska Street. We can't go directly there, Nowak cautioned. Not with the Rona already alerted to our activities. They'll be watching financial institutions, especially now that they know something was recovered from the grave. Then what? We go back to the hotel, maintain our cover, attend the embassy reception as planned. Tomorrow morning, we make a public show of visiting Nova's research facility across town. While attention is focused there, Kovac will access the safe deposit box. It was a sensible plan, tactical and measured. But Nia felt a growing urgency, a need to complete the mission her father had begun so many years ago. We can't wait, she said, her voice steadier than she expected. Now that I know what I witnessed, what I can testify to, we need to secure that evidence immediately, before they realize exactly who I am and what I know. Nowak studied her face, seeming to weigh her determination against the tactical considerations. You understand what you're suggesting? Coming forward as Natalia Walczak, testifying about what you witnessed, it would expose you completely. No more hiding, no more Nia Walker, and the danger would extend to Zora as well. I understand. And Nia thought of her daughter, safe in New York, but forever changed by the revelations of the past few days. But this isn't just about me anymore. It's about all the lives the Rona Syndicate has destroyed, all the justice that was denied. My father sacrificed everything to build this case. I won't let that be in vain. Nowak's expression shifted almost imperceptibly. Respect, perhaps, or recognition of a kindred determination. Then we move now, but not directly. We need a diversion, something significant enough to draw their attention away from Bank Handlowy. He turned to Kovac, who had rejoined them after securing the corridor. It's time to implement Phoenix Protocol. Kovac's eyebrows rose slightly, but he nodded without question. Timeline? 90 minutes. Coordinate with the team in New York. Nowak returned his attention to Nia. We're going to need your testimony, not just about what you witnessed as a child, but about everything. The fire, your father's plan, the years in hiding. Are you prepared for that? Nia touched the microcassette recorder, her father's voice still echoing in her mind. You were always stronger than you knew. Yes, she said. I'm done running. Phoenix Protocol turned out to be more than a tactical diversion. As their car navigated Warsaw's busy streets, Nowak explained the operation he had prepared years ago for this exact moment. When I acquired Nova Technologies, I discovered it was more valuable than I initially thought, he told Nia. Beyond its legitimate business operations, it maintained the digital infrastructure for several former Rona enterprises, banking systems, security networks, communication platforms. I left these connections intact, knowing they would eventually prove useful. You've been a Trojan horse inside their organization for 5 years, Nia realized. Waiting for the right moment. Your father provided the physical evidence. I've built the digital complement. Nowak checked his secure phone, where updates were arriving in encrypted bursts. At this moment, Nova systems worldwide are executing a coordinated data transfer. Financial records, communications, blackmail material, all flowing to secure servers controlled by trusted journalists and prosecutors in multiple countries. They'll shut it down, Kovac warned from the driver's seat. They're trying, Nowak agreed, but the protocol is designed to be unstoppable once initiated. Every attempt to block the transfer only triggers alternative pathways. By the time they realize what's happening, it will be too late. The implications were staggering. While Nia and Nowak had been hunting for evidence in Warsaw, the foundation for the Rona Syndicate's destruction had been lying dormant within their own systems, waiting for activation. "That's why you needed me," Nia said, understanding dawning. "Your digital evidence establishes the network, but without my testimony and my father's physical documentation, it lacks the historical foundation to connect current players to past crimes." Precisely. Nowak's expression was one of grim satisfaction. "Together, we complete the case your father began building 27 years ago." Bankhand Lowy rose before them, its modern glass facade incongruous among the classical architecture surrounding it. Kovac parked 2 blocks away, at a position that offered clear sightlines to the entrance while maintaining distance from potential observers. "Security assessment?" Nowak asked. Kovac scanned the area with practiced eyes. 2 men at the cafe across the street, another in the bookshop window. Plain clothes, attempting to look casual. Standard surveillance positioning. "They're expecting us," Nia concluded. "They're expecting something," Nowak corrected. "But not Phoenix Protocol. By now their leadership is in chaos, trying to contain the data breach. These are just foot soldiers, left to watch obvious targets without understanding the bigger picture." He turned to Nia. "Are you ready for this? Once you enter that bank as Natalia Walczak, there's no going back." The weight of the decision pressed on her. 27 years of hiding, of being someone else, had instilled caution so deep it felt like part of her DNA. But beneath that caution was something stronger, the inheritance of her father's unyielding commitment to justice. "I'm ready," she said, feeling the truth of it settle in her bones. Their approach was deliberate, no subterfuge, no attempt at concealment. Nia walked between Nowak and Kovac, her spine straight, her eyes forward. She felt the watchers' attention lock onto them, saw the subtle movements as they spoke into concealed communications devices. Inside the bank, the weekend staff looked up with professional smiles that faltered slightly at Nowak's authoritative presence. He approached the manager's desk, Nia a half step behind him. "My associate needs to access a safe deposit box," he stated without preamble. "Long-term holding, likely under the name Walczak." The manager, a middle-aged woman with shrewd eyes, assessed them carefully. "Identification will be required, of course." Nia placed her Polish identity card, the one Nowak had somehow procured, on the desk. "Natalia Walczak," she said, her birth name feeling both foreign and deeply familiar on her tongue. "The box would have been registered by my father, Stefan Walczak." Recognition flickered in the manager's eyes. The Walczak case had been sensationalized in its time. The crusading prosecutor whose daughter died tragically, whose anti-corruption cases mysteriously collapsed afterward. Nowak had been right. The story was still known in certain circles. "One moment, please." The manager left to consult the records, her posture communicating both efficiency and discretion. Through the glass doors, Nia could see one of their watchers crossing the street toward the bank, phone to his ear. Time was running short. The manager returned with a senior security officer. "We have located a box registered to Stefan Walczak," she confirmed. "However, accessing it will require verification of inheritance rights, given the circumstances." "The circumstances being my reported death," Nia said bluntly. "I understand. I have documentation." She produced the papers Nowak had prepared. Legal affidavits explaining the error in her death record, immigration documents tracing her path to America, even school records from her early years in Warsaw. Whether they would withstand close scrutiny was questionable, but they only needed to pass this initial barrier. The security officer reviewed the documents while the manager made a phone call, consulting legal perhaps, or possibly alerting higher authorities to the unusual situation. Outside, a second watcher had joined the first, both maintaining positions that offered clear views of the bank interior. "Everything appears to be in order, Ms. Walczak," the security officer finally declared, "if you'll follow me to the vault." Relief washed through Nia, but it was short-lived. As they moved toward the secure area, the bank's front doors opened to admit 3 men in suits, not the watchers from outside, but new players. Their bearing screamed law enforcement, though they wore no uniforms or visible badges. "Ms. Walczak?" the lead man called, his tone making it a command rather than a question. "We need to speak with you immediately on a matter of national security." Kovac moved subtly, positioning himself between Nia and the newcomers. Nowak's hand slipped inside his jacket, where Nia knew he carried a weapon. The security officer hesitated, caught in the middle of a situation rapidly escalating beyond banking protocols. "Gentlemen, this is a private financial institution. If you have official business—" "Internal Security Agency," the lead man interrupted, finally producing identification. "This woman is involved in an active investigation. We need her to come with us now." It was happening. Exactly what her father had warned about in his recording. Powerful people moving to silence her, using official channels to give their actions legitimacy. 27 years might have passed, but the Rona's methods remained the same. Before anyone could react further, the bank's lights flickered, then stabilized. Phones began ringing simultaneously throughout the building. The manager answered the nearest one, her expression transitioning from confusion to shock. "It's starting," Nowak murmured to Nia. "Phoenix Protocol is reaching critical mass." The lead agent's phone rang. He answered, listening intently, his face hardening with each passing second. "Understood," he said finally, disconnecting. He stared at Nowak with newfound recognition. This is your doing." "I don't know what you mean," Nowak replied with perfect innocence. "We're simply conducting banking business." The agent's radio crackled with urgent communications, too distorted for Nia to comprehend, but the effect on the men was immediate. Their attention shifted, priorities visibly recalculating. "This isn't over," the lead agent warned Nowak. To his colleagues, he barked, "We're needed at headquarters, now." After they departed, the security officer cleared his throat. "If you'll still follow me, Ms. Walczak." The safe deposit vault was a study in old-world security meshed with modern technology. Thick steel doors, biometric scanners alongside traditional keys. The box itself was smaller than Nia had expected, given its significance. The security officer used his master key in tandem with the one Nia had recovered from her mother's grave, then discreetly withdrew to give her privacy. Inside the box lay a single USB drive and a sealed envelope addressed to "My Swallow." With trembling fingers, Nia opened it to find a letter in her father's handwriting. "Natalia, if you are reading this, you have shown the courage I always knew you possessed. What you hold now is the culmination of my life's work, evidence that could not be destroyed, testimony that could not be silenced. I made a choice 27 years ago to prioritize your safety over immediate justice. I have lived with the consequences of that choice, watching evil men prosper while good people suffered. But I never stopped building the case. Every document, every witness statement, every financial record, all preserved here, waiting for the day you might return. The world has changed since you left Warsaw. Poland has changed. But the cancer I fought remains, hidden now beneath respectable titles and corporate facades. You alone can connect past to present, the crimes of yesterday to the power structures of today. Whatever you decide to do with this evidence, know that I am proud of you. You have survived. You have thrived. You have become a woman of strength and principle. No father could ask for more. With eternal love, Papa tears blurred Nia's vision as she tucked the letter into her pocket and secured the USB drive. her father's legacy entrusted to her hands. Not just evidence, but a choice. To step fully into the identity she had abandoned, to speak the truth regardless of consequences. When she emerged from the vault, Nowak was waiting, his attention focused on his phone. "It's done," he said. "Phoenix Protocol completed its primary objective. The data is out. Financial records, operational details, blackmail materials, everything. It's being published by news outlets in 12 countries simultaneously." The Rona? In chaos. Arrests have already begun in 4 countries. Resignations are being tendered. Stock prices for affiliated companies are plummeting. There was satisfaction in his voice, but not triumph. This was never about winning for him. It was about justice, about honoring the dead. "And the safe deposit box?" he asked. Nia held up the USB drive. "Everything my father promised. The final piece of the puzzle." As they exited the bank, the street outside had transformed. Police vehicles were visible at intersections, their lights flashing. Pedestrians gathered around smartphones, reading breaking news with expressions of shock and fascination. The watchers who had been monitoring the bank were gone, recalled to handle the crisis or fleeing to avoid implication. "What happens now?" Nia asked as they walked toward their waiting car. "Now you decide," Nowak replied. "The evidence is public, the network is exposed, but the historical context, the testimony only you can provide about what you witnessed as a child, that remains your choice." Nia thought of Zora, of the life they had built in New York, of the safety of anonymity. She thought of her father, working alone for decades to build a case he never saw completed. She thought of all the victims of the Rona syndicate, lives destroyed, justice denied, truth buried. Her secure phone buzzed with a message from Zora. "Mom, it's all over the news here. Something huge about corruption in Poland. Is this what you've been working on? Are you safe?" Nia smiled despite the tension. Her daughter, always perceptive, making connections others might miss. She typed a reply. "I'm safe, coming home soon with a story to tell. A true one, finally." To Nowak, she said, "I'll testify, whatever it takes to finish what my father started." He nodded, respect evident in his eyes. "I'll make the arrangements. International prosecutors, witness protection, the highest level of security for both you and Zora." "And you?" Nia asked, realizing she had come to care about what happened to this complex, driven man who had drawn her back into her past. "What will you do when this is over?" "Continue the work," he said simply. "There are other networks, other injustices. The Rona syndicate was just one head of the Hydra. The eternal crusade of the righteous," Nia thought, so similar to her father. "Will I see you again? After the testimony? After the trials?" Something softened in Nowak's expression, not quite a smile, but a lowering of defenses. "If you wish it, the battle creates unexpected bonds." Indeed it did. In a few short days, Alexander Nowak had transformed from a threatening presence in her carefully constructed life to a trusted ally in her most vulnerable moments. Not quite a friend, not merely a colleague, something for which she had no ready classification. As they drove away from the bank, from the chaos spreading through Warsaw's corridors of power, Nia felt a weight lifting, the burden of lies, of hiding, of perpetual fear. Natalia Walczak had died in a fire 27 years ago. Today, she was reborn from those ashes. The black hotel maid who had answered a phone call in fluent Polish had completed her metamorphosis. She was no longer just Nia Walker and no longer only Natalia Walczak. She was both, the sum of all her experiences, all her choices, all her strength, and she was free at last. If you enjoyed today's video, I'm sure you'll love the next one. Don't waste time. Just click on the screen.